recording.
So, I don't
Okay, so we're now recording in closed session. Just want to point out we have Eris Dalianis from Franzik on the line, as well as Jerry Gallagher from the Donovan Group. Eris and Jerry, we have Joby Daniels, Julie Swinehart, Michael Thomas, myself, Carrie Dillon, Allison Kelly, Joe Gretsch, and Brian Stashak in the room here. So I just want to kind of briefly point out in your blue folders, which we're continuing to update for each of these discussions, all of the previous meeting documents are on the left-hand side. The two new items on the right-hand side is a copy of the communication plan, which you have through email as well. And then that second document is something that just came in today, and that is an email from Michael Andrewich at Lee & Associates. They're the group that's representing Bridge Industrial. One of the tasks from the last meeting was to get feedback from them on how they would view the Park District inquiry. And so this is anecdotally, he had told me a couple weeks ago, yeah, it makes sense that that would be a more contiguous piece of land that would be desirable. So I just wanted to, he finally sent this to me today. The email just simply says, this leaves the most desirable site left for an industrial development, and then attached to that is a plot of the parcel, which is the same map that the Park District sent a month ago. So basically their interest is in that southwest corner of our property, just doing a land swap for that. So I think where we're at is the board needs to really talk about three things today. They need to talk about the Park District inquiry, the communication or PR plan, and then the potential terms and conditions and the resolution. So with that, I will turn it over to Carrie and open it up.
And I wanted to, I know I had a couple of conversations with some people throughout, like over the last month or so, just little small snippets here and there, and I thought it was best, obviously, that we're all together to kind of hash this all out, talk through all our different scenarios. This is a big deal for the community. It's huge. So, this is really where we have to kind of vet it out. We've talked before about how there's never been another board, or maybe there's been boards that have very lightly broached this subject, and then for whatever reasons, it's not panned out. So this is, kind of it's obviously a really big deal. On Thursday last week, Arlene Cabana, who is the board president for D107, reached out to me and wanted me to get some information about why they have an interest in the land swap. She wanted me to know from the 107 side of things. So I just took some notes that I was going to share. I said I would come back to the board and let you guys all know what she told me. It started with the fact that they have this desire for this pre-K center. This is a really big deal. She said currently they have a lot of people that are waitlisted that don't get on it. So there's a huge need for there to be more space. They do have a way to move it into their current middle school, like in the middle school building itself, but that's just not ideal. They want to connect it closer to the elementary space. And so that's why they kind of were eyeing that slice of land that we own, and they said that they think it would be very attractive to their community. She also told me that she would, she said if there was any pushback from the community over doing a land swap, that they would work with their community to explain what the benefits are to them to having that piece of land or that parcel. So she wanted me to convey that back to you. I'm trying to think what else. She feels like in general it's kind of like it makes their district appear more attractive too. They think it'll bring in new buyers, new families, new people who want to be a part of that school district and that community. So she thinks that this land, us doing a land swap and making that land available could be a really big opportunity for 107. So that was really from her perspective, and she wanted me to just make sure that I conveyed that information to the board. So that is what I'm doing tonight.
That's new news, and thank you. Can I ask a reminder question? The land that is within our larger rectangular shaped parcel currently is not owned by D107, but is owned by Pleasantdale Park District.
Right. Yes.
And the swap would be
with
between
the Park District.
LTD 204 and the Park District.
Right.
So I'm missing the part, I mean, I
About
realize we're
107?
gonna then side
Yes.
deal
Yeah.
on whatever, but they could side deal today, right? I mean,
Um,
they own, there's a parcel, it's not adjacent to D107's
Correct.
existing school, but there is an existing parcel. They could deal with Pleasantdale Park District today. I'm not saying they should,
They could.
but they're, okay.
Right, and then it would be
That's
on that
refreshing.
piece of property and stuff.
where it's located.
Right.
They might not
Right.
want to if they can't get moved.
Wasn't it the driving issues?
Yeah, it's
and-
the transportation thing. So they want to create a loop. So right now, buses go into their elementary district on school and go out on school. They want to create a U that creates a better traffic flow.
And-
buses.
And,
For
and,
buses.
and
It would be,
the
yeah.
document that you handed us today has not been prepared by D107 or Pleasantdale.
No.
So we
No.
don't know that this is what the
It's the same,
parcel
yeah, it's
that's
actually the same
indicated
thing.
would be
So
what
if
they
you
want.
look at the previous meeting documents,
The problem is, you're not really, I don't see how you're gonna make this happen smoothly, and I don't mean to be non-visual,
Right.
but School Road is this vertical street coming off German Church to the north that ends in this, you can see the aerial view of the school in the parking lot.
Yep.
And I've driven back there, 'cause my kid has a friend who lives nearby. So there's the parking lot, and then there's the baseball field, so I guess they could extend from the parking lot through the grass near the baseball field, but there is private property, and you can almost see the outline of this, I call it kind of a white plastic fence
So that's
that
what-
the
that's what-
property has.
so
And
so this is
it's
what
such
the.
a narrow
So
opening.
it would be, yeah, right through there.
Right there is the,
Yeah.
is where
Wait,
you're,
let's see where your
it's just the
plans are.
tiniest opening
Yeah.
for a road, okay, but even if I could envision that,
And just to
It's
recap, Brian,
just
you
a little
gave
clunky.
them that.
No, the park district, the school district sent this to me.
But you gave it to this Lee and Associates.
Yeah, I
not a
didn't give,
coincidence
I
that
didn't
it's
give
the
it to
It's not a
them.
coincidence.
oh, maybe
I
it is
just,
a
I just said to
coincidence.
them, we received an inquiry around a land swap. What does that do to what you guys told us last spring in terms of the value of the
So they
land?
just came up with this.
And they came back to us and said this would be, it would be more desirable to do something like this because because it's more contiguous.
Right, but so has Bridge contacted the Pleasantdale Park District at all?
Not that I know of.
So they just came up with this the same,
Yeah.
it looks like pretty close.
They wanted to get the exact acreage because this is not the exact acre. This is just a drawing, right? But what Bridge came back to today was they actually did the calculation based on the parcel, which is 6.89 acres.
Okay.
Okay.
Wait,
So it couldn't
based
be,
on what parcel?
Based on the size of the current park district parcel.
That-
So they took the current size of the parcel and said if we put it on the southwest corner,
Okay.
So
this is what it would look like.
Moved over
Yeah.
to here.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you've got the.
they
there you
could, they
go.
could stretch this a little bit more and make it a little bit,
Yeah.
but that was
They-
just,
they
it
could
looks
you
so
know,
identical.
They would narrow it or widen it to fit their purpose basically.
Okay, but it just looks so identical, it was like, here's
I
three
mean,
choices.
it is pretty identical, right? It's
Okay.
the desire on their part is to do a swap so that they have the property on the southwest corner versus on Willow Springs Road.
And they can't cut through, and I'm not trying to solve their problem or get us off track, but
Right.
they can't figure out a way to have not a single threaded queue, if you will, by hooking up with the other north-south road that almost touches, that abuts their property.
So they also talked about that too in one of these drawings. So if you look at, this was back in October when this was the school district, not the park district. So you remember the school district first approached us, informal discussions and gave us
Yeah.
this. Then the park district sent the official inquiry to the board.
Yes.
So just to be clear on how that
Right.
played out. So if you look at
But the option
the
two,
park
right?
district option 2,
That's what you're talking about.
they haven't done any land surveys. They're just looking at a Google map, right? I think their initial thought was if option 1 didn't work, then option 2 might allow them to connect to Howard Avenue.
Okay. Thanks.
But again, I don't think that was any like official
Oh, okay, yeah,
work.
right. going across.
Well, I mean, I also I'm concerned if we do the swap, if we're looking at doing the swap, then what about the park Pleasantdale as well as the school coming back and say, well, you knew you were intending to have this, like, kind of put this up for sale, And now we didn't know that. Like, that may change our plans where you have all these trucks coming. Well, I don't know. Like, you may possibly have a lot of truck traffic in and around, and somebody could say exhaust or, those kinds of like hazards that they're concerned with for like pre-K and just, I think there could be a lot of things that we're going to be looking like we're the ones who are trying to be smart about this. You know what I mean? Or not smart, but underhanded.
Okay.
I don't know. Am I the only one?
No.
That way. No, that's
I
one
said
of
that,
the.
but Jill's got something.
Oh, I was just to say this might be jumping into the comms plan, but one of the gaps that I saw there was the distinction between what we can control in this versus what the village will end up controlling, right? The village is the one who will work with the developer on how that can all come together. I hear what you're saying, which is why I'm glad to see a couple of different community town halls. But that distinction, at least in talking points and on the website, even if it's not front and center in key messages, like just being so focused on what our role is as stewards of the district's finances versus like how it ends up getting developed and all of the process that goes through that. Like they keep not lobbying us on that, lobby the village on that.
Well, I guess the question is, timing wise, would we be actually doing the swap after this comes out that we're selling this property?
The timing we talked about was different before. It'd be before, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, well, I'll let Eris talk to that, but you couldn't do the sale before the swap, right? Because you have to know what you're selling.
Right.
And so I think the decision around whether to engage with the park district or not is probably the first most important decision to make, because that's going to dictate what happens next.
So we talked last meeting in the rushed setting. Not rushed setting, but
It was
we
rushed.
It was
were.
rushed, yeah.
I think
I
we're
was
this is better.
Careful.
This is better.
And one of the concerns raised, and I took it as meaningful, was timing and delay in an election year. And I also thought later about your point, Michael, independently from you raising it tonight, that I believe we have this whole communication plan because we're anticipating some negative feedback.
Right.
And I think the negative feedback would be increased, exacerbated. I can't think of the right adjective. If part of the negativity is you're allowing the sale to happen, yes, somebody else will figure out the zoning, but Bridge is only going to be able to close, I think, if the zoning is, if they end up getting the zoning, they're not going to buy it for big price tag and not be able to put this kind of less desirable, if some perceive it as such, industrial thing there. But to do it next to little kids, like, people I think are just going to say, shame on all of you. You knew it. We absolutely knew it. And I think there will be enough information out there that it's clear that we knew what the plans were, which was to go to auction. So I also think it puts, so with the timing, I think it puts the actual process at risk. Again, you could have turnover with a new board, and I'm not just thinking about the residents who live nearby, I'm thinking about all the residents of D204, and if there's financial benefit and building enhancements, et cetera, from a sale. And I just want to be sure we're thinking about all the students in Brookfield and Hodgkins and Western Springs and all the other communities that are literally adjacent to the property as we're thinking through priorities. It's the whole district, it's not just the subset of Willow Springs residents. It was a new way I was thinking about it the other day.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things going here because, I hear what Mike is saying, but I also think, back to the point of, like, this land is here for a reason for us to be considering whether or not that we want to use this to do some improvements to our school. And I think that's what we're kind of discussing at this point. And there's an opportunity here to do this. And that, having the way that the current property exists for the park district, whatever goes around there is probably still going to pose a risk potentially to them being able to do anything or be able to use it. So I guess
Seems like the swap, they're better off being not surrounded by whatever is going on in there, but who's to know? I mean, I guess, is there an ability to, with the park district, before the swap takes place, and I don't know, I mean, without showing our cards and such, is there an ability to say, like, hey, down the line, we might be doing something with this property. You got to know that this property is fluid.
Sure.
So, I think they have to know that, but they might have to be reminded of that. And I don't know if that's a bad idea for us.
You mean
to be
they
doing.
being the park district?
The park district, to be reminded, like, hey, this is a fluid property. This is a property that, right now, it's a bunch of green space, but it might not be. Like, in the
Right.
future, like, just to kind of say, this could be switching up. You got to know what you're in for. This is property we own. That
Yeah.
Or would you let them, like, not make the deal? Because to your point, we would know, but let them make a deal with whoever buys it if they
Right.
want to, rather than.
That's certainly
Right.
an option.
I mean, I think, I like that better. I mean, I'm not for it at all because it could impact us with zoning and things like that. And that's gonna make us look even worse if all of a sudden you can't have it zoned a pre-K place because you have a, construction, or, a warehouse next to it. That could actually impact us, is my
We
concern.
want to be good partners, too, right? But there's a balance.
Right.
But we have like you said, we have our first responsibility is here.
Right, that's what I mean, though. But by being good partners, either giving a nod that it might happen or saying we can't make a deal with you right now, they'll in very short order know why, and then they could
I
make
think
a deal
that's-
with somebody else.
Is our goal to transact, to try to get to the point where we can begin this, I can't remember if we're doing auction or sealed bid
Sealed bid.
process and close it in, I don't want to say the shortest amount of time possible, but expeditiously? And if so, I mean, here, the consideration, if Bridge said, gosh, if you reconfigured this, we'd pay another $20 million.
Right.
Then I might think about this land swap. There's nothing financially in it, from just from a financial perspective.
Sure.
There's more risk and negativity from, if our main goal is to get this approved and moved forward and closed, in the quickest time frame. I heard Eris say and maybe you can ask if that's still the case, if we consider a swap, we will delay this overall process. And therefore, to me, it puts the whole thing at risk. I forgot about the zoning concern that you raised. I don't mean to be like negative or nervous, but I think we should stick to what is our goal. And maybe our goal as a board isn't to
Right.
transact and be positioned to transact expeditiously. Maybe it's to be slow about it because there's a different thing to weigh more heavily.
We've known about this for like 7, 8, 9 months,
Right.
like even prior to this. Like at least not the 107 or Pleasantdale, but we've known about this potentially from Bridge for, isn't it at least March?
Since March?
So we've known about it for a long time. So at this point, to be slow about it, I'm telling you, like, this is going to be a lightning rod, and depending on where we sit with the elections, there potentially could be that this is all just like overturned, and like we've spent like 6 months of this and trying to get this done, that it's all could just be wiped out in May. So if we're slow about it, I don't think we're rushing because we've known about this and done the studies and have done facilities surveys. So we have all of that, and we'll hear some of that tonight. I just am very nervous that this is really going to be a lightning rod that really potentially affects, like, if this gets done or not, depending on our speed.
I think then Eris could maybe speak to that, right? About the time frame of does this, how much does adding this land swap really affect the timeline?
So we talked about
I'm happy to talk about that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so let's say there was no land swap on the table and we were just looking at sort of the time horizon with board approval of the resolution, terms and conditions. You know, looking at existing meetings, you could approve the resolution, which would, you know, get the terms and conditions rolling. We publish. So if you did that on December 19th, we have to publish 3 times. We could do that December 27th, January 3rd, January 10th, have the bid opening, say January 16th or 17th, and then at your January 23rd board meeting, approve whoever the high bidder is, terms and conditions become a binding real estate contract. At that point, it becomes essentially an issue between the high bidder and the Village of Willow Springs in that 120-day feasibility period, the 210-day approval process commence. So that's how it could be done in the absence of a discussion with the Park District. As far as if there is a discussion with the Park District, what you could do, I think you could still commence the process at the January 23rd regular board meeting, provided that the Park District was willing to move, you know, fairly quickly. It's not a complicated process to set something like this up. It would be an intergovernmental agreement. They would probably have to call a special meeting, probably one. You guys would probably have to call a special meeting to get it approved. And then, you know, essentially you'd be taking this acreage that fronts Willow Springs and you'd be moving it and stretching it out, and it would become Park District Option 1, and that would be that. And then when you activate the sealed bid process, say at that January 23rd meeting, you would then be offering the property that works for the Park District and would work for Bridge or any other developer, you know, using Bridge as a proxy for the market, so to speak. You also, if you could get it done, something with the Park District, we would want to include in that agreement that they would be supportive of the district's sale of the property. They would be a partner in terms of supporting it through the zoning process. I think any prospective buyer would like that, and it would take an objector away from the process.
Just to clarify too, Eris, that in that scenario, the board would potentially be approving the winning bidder at the February regular action meeting versus
Yes,
January.
that's right, Brian. So it would be, we could still get it done in terms of January 23rd, approve the terms and conditions, publish 3 times, have a bid opening, and at your February meeting, make it a contract with board acceptance, yes.
2 questions real quick before they fall out of my head. Once the board approves the higher bidder, whether it be in January in the first scenario or February in the second scenario, are there any other school board votes related to closing the property sale?
There wouldn't be, no. At that point, you know, we're talking about this essentially if it's fully maximized, you know, an 11 to 12 month period where you're looking at a closing then in sort of winter or very early spring of 2024.
Okay. And my second question was the idea of involving the land swap, Park District, et cetera. I couldn't quite tell, when would they become in the know about the deal? Like, what feels best to me is that we get this out there publicly, we start publishing in the newspaper, whatever, and then we tell them we're happy to do a land swap. Then it's all in front of everybody. It's all, nothing's behind. We weren't not being truthful with them 2 weeks prior to publishing. To me, it's this transparency.
That's what I struggle
Yeah.
with.
But I
So,
didn't quite catch the
I think
sequencing.
Eris, can you talk to that? So you're saying start the publication process
Hey,
of the
we're gonna
sale.
sell
We're
this
going to sell the
land.
property. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, so I think if we did option 2, which this is, you know, Eris's option 2, where the board would commence the sealed bid process at the end of January, ideally finalize it, approve the contract end of February. it seems to me if you're going to sit down with the park district and talk about the land swap, I think it's hard, given what you have now in terms of additional communications from them, it would be hard not to bring up the fact that you're planning on selling the overall site. And I think it would be, I think the reaction would be quite adverse from both the park district, which would be your, party, your other party in the transaction, and then D107, which is going to be renting space from this park district facility once it's built. So it seems to me that given the additional information we have from the last meeting, I think you do need to let them know what you have in mind. Not that it would, their reaction would, potentially. I mean, if they say we are going to sue and we're going nuclear on this, you have to think about that. But I don't see how you do this land swap and then within like a week or so go ahead and improve the. It seems from a communication and sort of a intergovernmental comity, COMITY perspective, it would be difficult not to let them in on what you're planning on doing.
Right, but that also gives them, and we don't control how it gets out there. Then from there, and it can get to others that start.
Jerry, can you talk about that? The idea of what you were saying today, like the option of the joint statement.
Sure, I think it would behoove all of you to consider, and there might be some hand-holding that has to be done, but the optics of having both the Park District and 107 in some kind of a joint statement. Maybe you can't get 107, but having some kind of a news release that goes out to the media and on a single letterhead with multiple logos at the top. It's a shared statement. And I think that if that is the initial communication, you're really laying the foundation here for not only a transparent process moving forward, but one in which everybody seems to have somewhat aligned views on where you're going.
Do we have any indication that they would do that? I think we're under the assumption that they are going to be frustrated by the fact that we're going to have land that's being developed next to there. I don't know that we can count on that. I think that would be ideal. That'd be great.
But what if they're not in agreement?
That's what I'm saying.
And then it can spiral into negativity on the other side, backlashing back to us quicker.
It's going to happen though, right?
We're not in control of the mess. I'm so risk averse, and I want to make sure we're understanding what risks we're taking on with contemplating this land swap and the sequencing of information. If there was a way to say, hey, world, we're selling the land, and then to say, hey, Park District, you heard, we're selling the land, and so we want to do this in good faith only, and now it's out there. How can there not be a way to do this where you announce it publicly and then go to the Park District and say,
in the next email,
like in the next minute,
right? Like send it, and then here's a phone call.
Like,
why is that not going to work?
I just don't have the trust.
Well, I guess it does, but then when we go to put it for sale, because what is the timeline from when we announce, hey, we're going to sell this land, to when we actually put it out there as a sale with the proper dimensions and all of the,
Why don't
so
we give it
people
an extra meeting?
understand that.
Why don't we approve the resolutions on 12/19, or do the hey world, we're selling this on 12/19, and then have the bids come in 2 meetings later, end of February, where we're have the same end time.
So
I can't. I don't know that I can get my head around. And I appreciate, Brian, they're asking you for this, and you're in a weird spot with.
I'm not in a weird spot at all. Not at all.
I mean,
I think
this has to be. I think the board has to think about the two scenarios you guys have thought about so far are if we announce the lands, if we engage with the land swap and then announce the sale. That's not a great thing.
It's not.
I think
Does
the board
anyone
also
like
has
that?
to.
I don't mean to be so noisy tonight.
No, I think
I think the board also
I
has to think about this, about saying no to the Park District, and then a month later saying we're going to sell the land. And I don't know that that comes off as a good partnership and
No.
is kind of
No.
a big middle finger to the park district and the school district. So that's something the board should consider as well. There's a lot, because this was thrown on the table at the,
It
after
was,
7
kind of,
months,
yeah.
there's no doubt it created a probably more than anything, a communication PR discussion.
Yeah.
I don't trust the park district.
No.
I'm sorry.
There's no
Sure.
motivation.
Well,
Tell me
like-
what you mean by that.
No, Jill.
No, you go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I don't trust that they are going to have like anything on our side of us in their interests at all, purely. And it could leak out, and it could be devastating for however they may want to spend it. I just don't trust them. So that's why I'm coming from a lens of, I just like, we lose all kind of control over, of this, like, potentially affecting what we were trying to do in the first place.
Right, the whole
I
thing
think
blows
that
up.
it could lead to them being a negotiating partner in this deal, right? Like, okay, well, if you're doing this and now we know this and you want us to back you up, then we want financials out of it. We want assurances from, and we can't, I mean, it's a whole can of worms. I feel like I think the good thing about what you got today or yesterday is that they might have, once we're out of it, they might have luck with the deal with the developers.
Here's a question, and maybe this is what you're getting at. Is there a way to structure either the terms and conditions or an eventual agreement, or as part of the offer bid process, some statement or acknowledgement that there is a subsection of the contiguous parcel that's owned by a different governmental body, and that the potential high bidder or the buyer will entertain in good faith, something in good faith.
Mm-hmm.
What it's going to be in their best interest to have this carve out, right? It's going to most buyers are going to want to do this deal with the park district. Let them do the deal with the park district and keep us out of it. And then the park
Well,
district.
that might happen naturally, honestly, if the district just were to say move forward with this and initiate the process. It would be in Bridge's best interest
Right.
to, or whomever the high bidder is, to talk to the park district. And frankly, the village might make that a condition of the approvals, that some kind of land swap like that happen, or they would, if it's not a condition, they would strongly make it clear to the high bidder that if you want this to go through, you need to accommodate this request.
or at least listen or negotiate in good faith, or
Yeah.
something where it's off of us and it still happens, but there was nothing
Right.
that we felt we weren't, that
We
we
weren't
did this
trying
deal.
to-
Because again,
right.
the headline's going to be, LT School Board approved this deal
And
with these
knowing
little,
that-
your little children
Right.
and grandchildren,
I know.
knowing there'd be the, whatever you said, the noise and the fumes and the whatever right next door, shame on them. And instead we could avoid all of it, and they can still get their answer most likely with whomever buys this.
You have that, and then in the short term, knowing how quickly this is moving, the night before this gets released or whatever, do you have a conversation off the record? Just say, listen, you guys, we've been in other conversations, you're gonna hear the news tomorrow. You came in, like, this has been going on for the better part of a year. I don't know if you
Yeah,
would do
like-
that or not, just for
Right.
working relationships, but
Right. Can we have a
you could
conversation
do something like that right before it breaks.
to say, yeah, I mean, because it's the timing of this, for lack of a better word, this curveball that kind of got thrown into the mix. When we were on a certain path, we knew what it was. It was pretty simple. It was pretty clear. And then they threw us this curveball. And I understand, I think that I get why it's so desirable to them. And then, if it all worked out and the world was a great place and they had some kind of provisions in place with the people who buy this property, that it's like a certain number of feet that is between before they build, like there's some kind of easement or there's beauty space or whatever it is that needs to be done. Like, it could be a completely perfect harmony thing, but it does put us in a predicament because it really kind of changed our path, so to speak. If
We don't know that
entertain-
Bridge didn't talk to them.
We don't.
Right.
I mean, I'm
I
still
know.
a little curious about the
We don't.
timing.
We don't know.
Do we need to talk about
The exact
this
measurement.
idea further? I'm just wondering where we, I know we had 3 things to talk about, and I wonder where we're at with the current thing.
With what?
The land swap topic.
Well, I like your option.
Which was to say no to the park district.
But not, do we say no, or do we just say, hold that thought?
I know, I was wondering, like,
How about
what
Saying
them
no
off is
to
the
them
question.
and then throwing this
Right.
is not the way to go.
It's not.
The
We
board was
should
not
not
able
be
to reach
responsible for this.
resolution. Yeah, this
It's
is like we
going
are
to fall on
spending-
us.
What did you say, Michael?
We should not be responsible for what District 10 or with 107 and
Right.
Pleasantdale Park District want to do. We should not be responsible. We need to move
We need to think about
along
this.
the path of what we were going to do, and then, like you're saying, like then Bridge and or whoever, they can negotiate, because it's not. That's what they would have to do anyway.
Okay, so
I
then,
If it were in
understand
the
that, but
middle.
I'm saying, I would prefer not saying, no, we're not doing anything right now, and then coming out with this sale. I think we need to be smart about some phrasing that wouldn't be no, but hey, hang on, like,
Right.
hold that thought. I mean, if we just say no, then again, we're like, we could be perceived by them as the bad guys in not doing the deal when we could have done it. I just don't want to say no, or I don't want to say yes to them. I want to hold that thought, get
Well,
back to
When's
this.
the earliest we could announce this? 12/19?
for the sale, that we're putting
I mean,
the property up?
honestly,
Yeah.
there's no like, I from an administrative perspective, I feel like you have the information you need. Like, I don't think
Like
there's.
tomorrow, could we announce it? What's recommended? Because I'm saying maybe one option, to Allison's point, and I'm not convinced. I appreciate we're trying to think about everybody's reactions, but we could also decide we're not ready to conclude on this yet, and take another
That's a
month.
That's lingo, not like hang tight.
To answer your question,
Can I throw a suggestion out there? One thing we could put in the terms and conditions that wouldn't be a binding requirement, but it could be more something they would have to do but wouldn't have to reach agreement on, is add some language to the effect that the buyer is required to discuss with the park district the possibility of a land swap with the current park district property to some parcel in the southwest corner. We could even attach this option 1 as an exhibit and say it would be sort of representative of, and this way the park district is going to at least have a conversation with this contract buyer without tying anybody's hands.
Love it.
So then that means that we would go back to the park district after tonight's discussion and say, we're not interested in doing a land swap right now. We are in the process of can we say that we're going to be in the process of putting the land up for sale?
Oh God, not unless it's out there.
because it's going to be.
right?
I think what Julie said of
right.
like where, I don't remember what you said
We
now,
can't
but
The board was unable to reach
a conclusion.
a
Okay.
conclusion or
Okay.
consensus on had healthy discussion, but we'll
But can't decide.
are they pressuring us for time? Because if so, that would be really suspicious. Like,
No.
this land has been out there
No.
forever.
Yeah.
I think my take on it is
They-
the only people that are anxious is the school district because they want to build
Yeah.
this pre-K center.
I know.
And they want to
Do
start
they have
tomorrow.
funds? Do they have like
They
a
do.
referendum
They'll
or
probably
something
have to.
that they
They'll
have
probably have
Did
to go to
Arlene talk
referendum.
about
She
that? Yeah.
did.
So
she
1
did.
month
They-
shouldn't matter.
No.
No.
I mean,
It doesn't-
it's going to be a
That would
process
be
for them
in
as
April,
well.
on April's board, election, if they're going to do that, a referendum of some sort, wouldn't it?
It would have already been communicated. If it was on April, it's not. So
Oh.
it's down there. It has to be down
It
the
is,
road.
yeah. I mean, she told me that, yeah,
There's
they
no
didn't
rush.
have.
Okay, we should.
But
say
I
we
do
still
like
play
the
it.
idea of saying we just weren't able to reach a conclusion.
Okay.
That says we're not saying yes, we're not saying no.
And then in
I
the
would just
meantime-
rather, because we aren't really coming to a conclusion of whether.
I mean, I'm just gonna play devil's advocate. Why do we even care? Like, why do we even tell them anything? Why didn't we just say no at this point?
I absolutely appreciate that as well.
Be
Yep.
very black and white. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know why are we
No,
like,
that's a really valid point
I don't think
because
it's being great
Right.
partners in the district. I think that we have to, I think we're gonna go forward with the plan that we already have. We're just trying to figure out how do we navigate.
But I don't know that we owe them anything.
Well,
We don't
they're
know
all
them anything,
still-
but they are
There are
our
students,
taxpayers.
there are, yeah.
There are people. And we
But
do
not,
owe
the school
them.
district is not our people, nor the park district, because they do not pay it, the taxes. They are not homeowners, which would be.
They are not, but.
With that.
No,
I mean,
but
so
all
I
But
the
think-
there are
people they
people,
serve
there are
do,
a community,
and
and I
are
do
For the
feel
community,
like
yes, but
they're
not.
the ones that are going to be the most affected by this. I'd like to, I would like to be, I would like not to say, if we say no, I think there's there,
Well, you could say not at this time. I mean, rather than.
But
We'd
they
like
might
to be
ask
able to
Brian, they might
do-
corner Brian and say, why? Can you give me
Yeah.
the 3 reasons why?
well,
And
we
then that
just
would get
couldn't-
difficult.
We couldn't come to a conclusion.
Well,
I
Which
mean,
is
you
easy
wait
for
a
us.
month.
say
For me,
on the
it's-
other side of
that's
it,
kind of in October
we've added
was
language to the contract.
Initial, because remember in
To
October it was verbal, it
encourage
wasn't written, so
Best case.
the initial was no
Like,
interest.
I like being
We didn't
able
get
to
an
say
official
that.
letter,
At first, I like
and
doing
then the school
it,
district
and then I
president
like
reaches
being-
out to
it's
Carrie,
not binding,
like, so-
so we can't
Conversations
force it.
escalated.
No, we can't,
Communications
but that's
escalated.
something that we're doing.
All right,
I
I'd like
think
to
we
tie
should
the
do that.
response closer, like,
I mean, I can appreciate, like,
To
you,
the date
so your,
of the
what your
public
perspective is, you want to give them like a heads up.
No, I just want to say, we're not able to make a conclusion right now, meaning.
But I think we have made a conclusion, so that's, I guess,
Um,
where, that's misleading.
Well, I think we're all under.
We weren't like a consensus on how to go about the land swap. We haven't fully maybe vetted, like, I mean, we just all haven't
I think
completely,
we
we're not all in
responding to
agreement
two different
about it.
things. You were saying, why aren't we telling them no? Because we've decided we don't want to swap
Right.
before this deal. But I think
We
what
all wanna
I
swap.
was hearing you say
I don't know if we
was,
wanna
why
swap.
do we care
Because it might-
About a swap.
about them and the swap?
No,
is
no,
what
I mean,
heard
why
you
do we
say.
have to,
we're being very accommodating in some of the language that I think some of us are sharing tonight, of being very thoughtful. I'm not saying it's bad. But it's probably, I think what your point is, Jill, is it's not required or necessary. We are a board that makes decisions, and you don't always have to explain
kind
your
of where I'm
actions, or probably ever
I
have
get
to
it.
explain your
think
actions. So I
that's-
think it's
But
just a
we
difference
do,
in.
because we are going to have a PR issue the minute the sale comes out. This is going to be a big deal for the entire community.
Right.
And that's the community that is the most affected. So do we want to, I think we
you want
want
to start
to
off on a
play
bad foot, is what you're
partners
saying.
with that group especially, because those are the people that are going to be.
But I think
more
they're gonna
on
say
fire.
it would be more beneficial, like what I'm hearing you, and like we said here, is it is more attractive to have the swap done.
To whom? To whom?
To Bridge
buyer.
had said that
Yeah.
in their thing, to have the swap done. I mean, no one has discussed, are there gonna be zoning ramifications, anything like that. But for us not to agree to it in advance, it might actually be a negative.
It could be.
They could perceive that as a negative once they talk to Bridge and say, I mean, we're not, there's nothing confidential with Bridge to say we presented that and we had liked that idea, but they voted no against it. I mean, we have to have a comeback for that also.
Right.
Well, I think the comeback is that wasn't, I mean, the swap at that time, the timing wasn't going to work for us to do that. And, I mean, I think just what we've been talking about is that
But I
it's
think their
best-
argument was it was going to be better to do that.
Whose argument? Bridge?
Park District, for the
Right.
community. Because they're saying if they talk to Bridge, Bridge has proposed almost the exact same drawing that
We don't
the
know if
Park
they
District.
talked
We
to
don't know that they talked to Bridge, and
No, but
And-
afterwards they might. If they're going to go before hearings, they're going to go doing the Bridge. And if we push it on to Bridge to go and do
I
it.
think
can't
we
make
could
a
say we're not in the
swap.
business of swapping, like we were set and we were going to make this sale. You threw this curveball, we're not going, we're gonna set this up so that you potentially can work with
They'll do it with the developer.
the developer, but
I don't
we're
think
not
we
in the
can make
business
this-
of making these swaps.
the
Like, we're-
swap because they won't. They're agreeing to something without knowing all the information that we know, and that was the whole point in the beginning. We don't want to have that on our shoulders to agree to something without being transparent. So, to your point, I think nobody wants to make the swap, right? We want to keep going down the path. So, do we say no, or do we say what?
I just think we say not at this time. But I mean, that's also where we have the PR firm to chime in about it. But I mean,
Jerry, what are your thoughts on that whole discussion?
So what I'm hearing is that the best course of action would be to be as honest as possible. And, you know, there are times, certainly when you look at a situation that you always want to be transparent, but maybe not provide as many details. But in this conversation that I'm hearing is to let out to the public what this timeline has been and the process of the board, and then this curveball at the end that, frankly, you were not equipped to be able to handle. And so I think being as forthright as possible about this entire process is the way to go.
But
That would be my advice.
that's
confidentiality.
once we
Yeah,
become,
the confidentiality
that's
is
once
the
we become
tricky
public
part.
with it. But we're talking prior to that.
But what I like about that though too though is sharing the timeline. We've been talking about this since March, and there's a lot of considerations, not the least of which is being good community partners with the park district, our feeding districts, and we wanted them to know what they're agreeing to before we go down that path. That's a great approach. But and if we're gonna announce this in like days, I think you can
You can just buy
put
it.
them off. You could have that 11th hour conversation.
But then, does that concern you still? If we announce it before going back to like Pleasantdale and or the park district?
No, I would think that would be better to announce it before. I just don't want to give them a no.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to give them a yes or a no. I just want to,
You
I
think we
would
could
rather they
No answer.
understand what's happening. Sorry?
Give them no answer right now. Maybe.
Correct.
Could we table this part? I don't mean to keep moving us along, and I'm not tired or anything, but
No,
I feel
but-
like some of part 2 and 3 of what was on the agenda
Yeah,
for
we gotta
tonight
talk about the
might help
terms
us
and
if
the
we
communications
kind of
plan.
pause here and then hear the communication plan and and then revisit, come back. I don't think we have much to
Yeah,
come
let's-
back to, but
I think, yeah, let's talk a little bit about that rollout of the communications plan. I think that makes sense.
as long as we come back, I'm not trying to say let's not conclude.
Well, I think it all hinges on that.
What did you say, Michael?
I think it all hinges on what we're deciding now.
You think the
Well,
communication
regardless,
plan-
this starts with a kickoff in December. So whether it's, next week in December or
Right.
3 weeks into December, it's fast.
The agreement, we have one agreement, then we're not going to swap it before, so we would be moving forward with December.
This comms cascade starts in December, no matter
So,
what.
yeah, it was
So-
actually really,
Oh, it's
it's
independent?
preparing the content in
Oh.
December. It was all launching, this was all based on a January
A
launch.
January launch.
It was just
Okay.
preparing,
Oh,
like,
create,
like one
yeah.
thing in there is that if the board wants to do a video on this, then we would need to record that in December and have it
Yeah, I
ready
have
for
right,
questions
right.
about what that would be.
What's that?
I have questions about what that would be.
Okay, but I
have
guess,
thought on that.
can we even talk about, like, besides the communication plan, then the steps that if we go through the process one more time, we have to, in December, we would vote to put notice out to the community about the sale of the land, correct?
in open session,
Well,
right?
Right.
yeah, so just let's make some assumptions here. Are you talking about adopting the resolution and the terms and conditions at the December 19th meeting? Is that what we're?
I think that's what we would do if,
And that would then create the published
the
notices on the
earliest.
21st, the 28th, and January 4th or whatever,
January
Right.
3rd, January 10th, and 12th.
There you go.
Something else.
and then be ready to approve the winning bid at the January 23rd meeting.
So then that means that this
That'd have
comms
to be moved
plan
up.
gets moved
pushed
up, which
Yeah.
is a heavy lift. But also with a shift in some of that announcement
Messaging.
direction based on what
Yes.
Jerry just shared, which I like that.
The messaging
A lot.
has changed based on the last 15 minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
So one question about the timeline, and I know nothing about this, but we're talking about December 19th and all those days just over the holidays, let's say, like, because all of a sudden we're really talking about January 4th or whatever that Monday is. So, do people have enough time to put a bid in, and do people have enough time to get that proposal and everything in gear? Because
Eris, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think they do, and I'll tell you why. Is the entities that would be interested in this parcel, they are in the business of this parcel's probably on their radar. They're in the business of evaluating potential development sites for exactly what Bridge is proposing, whether it's Bridge or Centerpoint or Duke or Dermody or Brennan Investment Group or Pontarelli, I think is what they're called. That's what they do. You know what I'm saying? They know how much they can pay maximum per acre, and then what it costs to bring all the infrastructure in, to build the buildings, how long it takes to sign leases with tenants. So, you know, in addition to publishing, either in a local paper or the Tribune, what we've talked about is the possibility of running an ad in Cranes. I think that would catch the attention of additional eyeballs, get the thing on LoopNet or CoStar, so you would have the broadest possible audience. And then also, you know, to the extent we know a handful of potentially interested parties, send them everything. And just email somebody at those companies and say, hey, we're going to be selling this property, wanted to get it on your radar. So I think there's going to be interest, honestly. Obviously, we have to set the minimum bid at a reasonable price, and you know we'll talk about that as if and when that decision is made. But you know, I think there's going to be a lot of interest here. You know, the market for these sort of logistics properties is still strong, and I've mentioned this before, but look at the Allstate campus. You know, they're demolishing those office buildings that have been there since the 60s, and they're going to be building logistics warehouses, distribution facilities, truck terminals, etc.
Is that on the way home today?
is there a reason, and I have no idea, is there a reason we're trying to get this approved in January versus February?
You know, to the extent there is concern that this could be, you know, influenced by or become a hot button issue at the April election, you know, getting it done sooner rather than later. If it's a contract in January, the whole land use process will already be rolling with the village of Willow Springs. You know, that'll be in motion, and at that point, it's sort of out of your hands. And you know, is it better to get this done sooner rather than later and let the process unfold?
Yeah. I mean, anything could happen in the market, right? We could really move into a recession. Interest rates are crazy. I was hoping that pricing would hold based on movements in rates. We wanted to wait for the facility study to be done, or we could have done this 4 months ago, 3 months ago. I mean, we could have done it much sooner. Am I recapturing some of our thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the two big things were the enrollment study, the facility study.
Yeah.
Even though it's not done, I feel like it's close enough to being done where we have a pretty good idea of what needs to happen. And honestly, anecdotally, I think our community is well aware of what we need to do with our facilities.
Yeah, and I like the elegance of 12/19. It probably is the Monday that people start turning in paperwork for running for school board, or it's the next.
It's the Monday.
12/12.
I want to be
Monday.
careful about having that. I mean, it's fine to have this conversation right here, but having that be a narrative outside this room, because I just don't think that's really where our head should be. But we have to be pragmatic about it. But I also think, again, back to the first part of the conversation, we don't want this swap issue to linger for 2 months. And I think the sooner that we get out there, the less we drag our heels with them. They can put things in motion if they need to start reaching out to Bridge or the village or however that's going to work. So just why wait?
So if we approve it on 12/19, is it on an agenda on our website the Wednesday before? when is
That's,
this?
I mean, that's going to be a really big consideration, right? Because it would be the 14th is when you guys would get the packet. We wouldn't have to post the agenda item or the materials until 48 hours ahead of time, which could be Saturday. We normally post on Friday.
Okay.
But I think the communication, just in the spirit of transparency, we would want the communication to go out like weeks
Coach
before that.
Oh, weeks before that.
I mean, do you want to have? I mean, this is a board decision, but like, I would recommend that you at least give the community time to process this versus throw out a communication on December 16th and then approve a resolution on the 19th. That would look. I think that would look.
That would look like we're underhand.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay. But are we with this timing?
Well, I
that
think
was
that's a question for
contemplating.
Jerry.
Yeah. I don't-
We would have to hit the ground running like tomorrow to get these things, to get the drafts ready.
Yeah.
And, backdate from the 19th. So is 2 weeks ahead of that enough time to announce to the community and then do this on the 19th? I mean, that's really up to what the board thinks in terms of how much time in
I think
advance.
that would make sense just with our cadence with committee of the whole and stuff like that, even though it wouldn't be,
Right. Right.
but that would be appropriate. But
Jerry, talk about that.
Well, I'd say transparency in the timeline of it bails you out of a lot of trouble. Because the number one thing in communities across America that are dealing with a situation maybe not as complex as this one, but something like it, people will complain about it being done under the dark of night. And so the sooner that you get something out there, that you're allowing the public and those who are naysayers, and I don't know what percentage of the public will be naysayers, but you're not allowing them to put the pedal to the metal, so to speak, on that issue, because there are so many people that will want to attack you for some reason, and it might just be for a general distrust of public government. And transparency is what they almost always come back to, even if they can't put their finger on why it is that they're upset. And so they will try to use that against you. So whatever we can do to be able to bump this up, I think will benefit you.
would your team be comfortable putting together that initial, video aside, but the messaging, once you have your general templated messaging, you can adjust it as needed for these various channels. Are you and your team comfortable with that?
Yes, we would be, because I think that once you have that messaging down, it becomes very much a simplified process to recreate for the different platforms.
Right.
So timing-wise, what would you be comfortable? How quickly are you comfortable with it?
I would be comfortable within days having something ready to go that you could share with the public.
Maybe think about an announcement the week of the 5th.
Or even, well, that's the 2 weeks. Could we even go earlier?
Like next
Keeping in mind we
Thursday,
have
the
a board
1st?
meeting on the 5th, so would we want to get it out before
Even
that? So we
before?
have 2 board meeting cycles
Yeah.
to go through with communication, or?
Yeah.
So
I would think so.
possibly, well, how does that
So like next,
generally
so this is,
work?
28th.
next Monday is the 28th. If we, Jerry, could we have something ready to go, vetted through the board and ready to go like the 30th?
Right.
Vetted through
Oh.
email?
It would be an email message to the community, to
I'm
families,
sorry.
right?
I think
Board-
so. I
yeah.
mean,
Oh,
yeah.
us vetting it?
Yeah.
Oh, sharing the document, you mean?
Yeah, I would definitely want the whole board to
Oh.
look at it and sign off on it.
And who does that go? How does that get distributed? Since we haven't done something like that specifically for this, like
It would
that
come
you?
out from, no.
I was like that. Yeah. Okay.
This would come out, this is a board, this is a 100%, I mean, that's why the video would be it would have to be board members, like, so this would come from the District 204 Board of Education. I mean, this is, I think back to the
I don't think
workshop we did in
done
here
this.
about the different inform versus decide, there's no ambiguity here. Like, this is
The buzzer.
when you're selling a $65 million property, this
Right,
is a Board of
right,
Education
right.
decision. There's no ambiguity
So
there.
you're
I didn't
not gonna
let
be in the
Jerry
video,
answer the
Wait, Jerry,
date.
is it-
Jerry, go ahead. Sorry.
Whether that date works, which was the
I'm
30th.
sorry.
What, in or around December 5th? Is that what you're asking? Or
No,
you're saying
it's
November
the
30th?
November 30th. So like basically a
Yeah,
week
no,
from
but-
Wednesday.
Yeah, we could have something. I think the sooner the better. so that we can go through different iterations and make sure that everybody's comfortable with it. But I would imagine, we could have something by Monday, and at least it's infancy form for you to review.
Okay.
Right.
So everybody'd have to put their editing hats on right away and take a look at it, review it, approve.
Yeah.
I looked at it.
What's that, Michael?
No, I said I looked at it. I just, well, I'm concerned one part of this. So when we look at the closed session, so this relates to timing. And the timing that we're looking at now of possibly like November 30th. But when we look at like the closed session, like notation of why we're in closed session, I thought that in the language too, that you potentially do put potential discussion of sale of closed property as one of the items of why you're in closed session, and I'm not trying to talk loud, but we're in closed session, and people are going to deduce that that's what we're in closed session about. But does that cover us? Does this cover us? Because then,
Yeah, so we've used, that's the same.
no, I know, but in the
paragraph
boilerplate language, I thought though that like closed sale, like possibility of sale of property was one of the items that is put.
Yeah, Eris, can you talk to that?
Be a little more specific, Brian, in terms of.
Yeah,
You know
let
what
me,
I'm
so
saying?
on our public agenda, to where it says closed session, the paragraph that District 204 has always used, we just copy it. It says recommended adjournment into closed session to discuss pending or probable litigation against, affecting, or on behalf of the public body, collective negotiating matters, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, and the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee or legal counsel for the public body. So that's just the paragraph that has always been on our closed session agendas. I think Michael's question is, it doesn't mention property discussions.
Right, and I thought that in the past that is one of the items that is usually put in that kind of paragraph. So that's my question.
So normally we would, you would want, there's a specific sentence provision in the Open Meetings Act that allows you to go into closed session to discuss purchase, sale, or lease of real property. So, frankly, going forward, I think that sentence ought to be included in your sort of generic reason for going into closed session, because that is the reason we've been going in for the, what is this, the third or fourth time that at least I've been part of the conversation. So I would add that in going forward.
Yeah.
I feel like we might be covered under, legal counsel.
Litigation.
Well, negotiating collective
Well, that's specific
deliberations.
to.
Yeah, I think that's more for personnel and teacher groups, that sort of thing.
Add it for the next one, is that?
Yeah, I would add it for the next one. I mean, I think it's unfortunate that has not been there. I don't think it's, fatal to what's been going on here. And, it's just the way it worked out, frankly.
Right,
So,
I understand, and the reason why I'm pointing it out is because we've been scrutinized for everything under the sun, and that this is potentially now, as we go forward with possibly publicly releasing that this is going to happen, or that we're looking at this on the 30th, then people are going to detectives are going to be backtracking and trying to. I'm just trying to make sure that we are covered any way and every way, and that this is not just another thing that's thrown down. So that's all I was trying to raise the red flag
No, it's
on.
good because we won't.
Yeah, I
have a
understand.
Session before this is published again.
Right.
So.
So the decision is, do we modify the paragraph at a future meeting? And
Or we can do it in January, but I'm just saying, that's something that I'm sure people are going. Somebody's
No,
going
I think
to
that's
call
fair,
for.
yeah.
But it'll be public by then, and we can't change the past. And so, great point for future, and we change it going forward, and the information's already out there, right?
I
We're still
think-
covered.
I feel like generally, or legal counsel for the public body. We've been getting legal this entire time.
But
Is it as
it's-
specific as it needs to be?
But it's part of the preposition. Read that clause. The way I read it is, if you're talking about dismissal of a specific employee or dismissal of legal counsel. But maybe that's not the way to read it.
So if,
No, that is the way to read it. It's not meant to be if you're getting information from your legal counsel. It's about if you are looking to dismiss your legal counsel. That's right. Yeah.
All right, well,
so
yeah,
if
we
you,
can't do anything about it.
I would just say, like, if we continue with the same paragraph and someone, disputes that, it would go to the public access counselor,
Yeah.
right, Eris?
It would, yeah. That's what would happen. That would be the next move.
Which is what has happened
if somebody's.
before. So what would the, I could talk to Brian Crowley about this, but the likely
The public access counselor would say, "Don't do it again."
Yeah,
That's what they would say.
So we won't get in trouble with any necessarily governing bodies. They'll be telling us that it's a
they would
warning,
say-
don't do it
They
again.
would say
that kind of
change
thing.
it for moving forward.
The
So the
concern
question is,
is-
do we change it moving forward now, or do we wait for?
It'll be a moot point because this will be out there.
Yeah.
Can you
I
just
think we could
change it on the
going
website,
forward.
like, tomorrow morning?
You can't change an agenda.
No, not an agenda,
But
but
for
isn't it
future ones?
general?
It would be for the December, so we could change
Committee
it
of
for
the
the
whole.
December 5th. Well,
Well, we won't be.
we
doing
won't have a closed session
for that, and that's
unless we
overnight.
need to, but like, it would be for the December 19th.
Okay.
So what would happen is,
You're right, but then it'll already be out there, so I guess that's okay. Yeah, let's do that. I agree with that. I think once, because we know we'll already have had that information out there, then it'll make sense to put it here on that.
is that your thought,
I mean,
Eris?
here's another thought too. Is I know you don't have a closed session planned for the December 5th meeting, but maybe have a closed session unless you're going to have this as an open session discussion.
Okay.
What is an open session discussion?
What's
Are
that?
we going to discuss anything? I thought we wouldn't be meeting on this topic until.
Until the
Yeah,
resolution
19.
happens. I thought that's
Mhm.
when it becomes an open session.
Unless there's something
But
else
if
we have
we're
to discuss.
publicizing this late next week,
Oh,
and
we
then
still
we have our
do have
committee
to
of the
talk about it.
whole,
We should be talking
we
about it
always
at the
talk
committee.
about,
Right.
I mean, it's
We
going to
should
be on
be
the
talking
agenda,
about it.
so.
So
Yep.
does that go into close then on the 5th?
Well, you could, and that would allow you to then use that language as a reason for going into closed, especially if it's going to be known. If you're communicating on this topic on or before December 5th, you might want to have a closed session at that December 5th meeting just to gauge, the nature of the comments you're getting, things like that,
Let's do that.
I think that's good.
Okay,
All right.
fair enough.
But we
we
all
do.
recognize, like, to your point, it's going to happen, Michael. It's just, we all know it.
Yeah, I just want people to be prepared.
Yeah, no, thank you. You're right.
I know. I'm just
Then we need to prepare for it.
Well, I mean, again, and then,
But you do it with a smile.
You were just all trained.
so we're gonna have a closed session on the 5th. Can we get a couple dates locked in here that we agreed to? We're gonna see a email communication to the community from Jerry's team on Monday the 28th.
But email communication and stand up a web page.
Yeah, we have to have the page up because when we release the press release, we have to guide people to go to the web page. So, and it looks like, I mean, Jerry, you've got most of these things kind of already in place, right? We've got these drafts
At least-
here.
Right, and I think the bare bones of many of these things. And once you have that message, agreed upon, it becomes very easy for the rest of this to fall in place.
It's really, that's the message that's posted on the website, it's the message that's posted on social media, it's the communication that's sent to all stakeholders.
Correct.
Can I ask a question from the PR side of things? Like, so much obviously is about the messaging, and I don't know how much of it we're allowed to brand, if for lack of a better word, or if we're just being very straightforward, like it says, selling the property. Like, it's really that simple. Does it ever get wrapped into something like improvement project?
Well, I think we should tie it all
know?
back to the strategic plan. Personally, that was one of the
Right.
things that I was hoping we could make a stronger tie as to,
Right.
like, it's not, this isn't a notice about the tax levy. This is a whole different ballgame. And by the way, doing this at the same time we're doing a tax levy also will have to be addressed at some point in messaging, because people aren't going to say, well, why do you need to tax me if you're going to get all this money from a sale? Like, that's just going to be some of the things that we talk about. Allison,
but-
why are you looking at me?
Because I'm like, oh my
It's a
gosh.
lot. It's a lot.
Also, too, but so Brian, like the bonds, like the sale of the bonds, like isn't that like next year or something?
That would be
And
next year.
like, how much is that potential money also that's out there?
25
That's
million.
like
About 20, probably 20
so
to
that's like
$25
a
million.
huge like we like we have to like have like really like, okay, what are you really doing? And then like you just
Yeah.
like
So can I talk about that for just
Okay.
a second? So if the board continues with the property sale, and let's just use that number of 65, the bond issuance is 25. All the work that's happened this fall with the facilities plan, we just turned that data over to the architects about 2 weeks ago, and they now have until mid-January to come back to us with basically a comprehensive plan on what to do. I will say that there's 4 or 5 themes that come through on the data: modernizing classrooms and updating athletic facilities, and continuing with HVAC and improving accessibility. Like over and over, like those are the 4 themes that come up. So the first, what they're doing, this is what we've asked them to do, is to put together a phase 1 that if the board has $25 million to expend during the summer of 2024, here are the 4 or 5 projects that is recommended to do in phase 1. In phase 2, we've put a number of $65 million on it, and they will come back with, if the board has $65 million, these are the projects that would be funded out of phase 2. And then phase 3 is, what were we not able to accomplish after phase 1 and phase 2? That is all going to come back to the board at the February 6th committee of the whole meeting. And the purpose of that meeting is not to decide, the details of projects. It's to give the architects broad authority to say, out of 25 million, let's look at 7.5 to 10 million to identify a South Campus cafeteria project, because that's coming up really high. Let's allocate X number of dollars to modernize classrooms. Let's allocate X number of dollars to improve air conditioning. Let's allocate X number of dollars to improve athletic facilities, or whatever the priorities are. Then so the board will have that discussion and hopefully, get some consensus on, here are the projects we're going to fund. And then the architects will go back to work, and they'll have several months to do focus groups, and we can do some site visits, and they'll come back with more detailed plans, and then we would get authorization for bid specs in probably August to go out for the following summer. So that's how that will all.
How does it all work as far as, I feel like we have whatever, $3 to $5 million of projects, and we can't get them done in the summer. We're really stressed and scrapping.
Yeah.
How do we do $80 million?
It would be
of work?
spread over 3 or 4 years.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
gonna be- yeah.
that's what all districts are doing. Like, you look at the projects, surrounding projects to us that are doing $150 million, it's 4 to 5 years worth of work. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
probably displacing students into
Yeah.
trailers
Yeah.
for
It does.
Potentially.
whatever.
Which
So,
that
which we
covers.
haven't done historically, but
Got
sounds
it.
like it would be necessary for
Makes sense.
some set of this.
And I think to your earlier point, Julie, too, the question of like, why now? We have a tax levy, we have a bond issuance, and all of that stuff is, there's a market for it. And
Yeah.
this is, we've just been sitting on it for 50 years.
Time is now.
So,
This was
So
the
I
that's all
say
part
that just
of
to
it.
be very conscious of closed session qualifications here. I just say that because of the process that is going to happen.
Yeah.
And to inform the timeline around the property sale, just to be very crystal clear on that.
Well, and at some point, not in this initial communication, but like all of this gets added to
Yep.
the web.
Yep.
Can I ask something about, and this kind of goes along with the communication and all of how we're setting ourselves up. Who's going to be mad about this project? Where are the risks of this project?
Of the sale?
Yeah,
Park District.
I mean, that area, those homes.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to foresee.
I know.
what-
Well,
I'm really curious about this answer because it's a question I've pondered for 7 months.
it's a lightning rod for the anti that hate this board.
The what?
The anti that hate this board.
People who are not
I mean,
supportive.
like, we have to be real about this. Like, I'm not saying that we should not move for that.
Right.
I'm saying that these are the realities, and this is what is going to be, like, used.
And the comments would be, like, what would be the negative comments?
The
that you
negatives
might
that,
predict?
like, once they find out that this is, like, trucks are potentially going to be coming in and around, even without the childhood education center, in and around the homes of that area and the kids that live there,
Okay.
that big, tanker, whatever,
Right.
trucks are, semis coming, rolling through in and around that area. There's just, like,
Right.
I mean, it's that's why we're messaging to try to get out ahead of it once we do, to try to make the best spin of possible. But like, I think maybe folks on the phone could say like what kinds of just objections that they've heard when a board is like to sell a piece of property that's in and around a neighborhood. Just like general, not
Right.
Like,
Yeah, I
so
guess, like
who-
Jerry,
is
I
it
mean,
Eris
I guess
or-
that would be Eris or Jerry. I guess the question is, like, if people are going to be saying, well, why would you sell a property when you know you're putting all these people at risk for, fumes and truck traffic and all that kind of stuff and destroying the community in this green space, right? I guess.
Can you speak to that, Jerry?
Yeah, maybe let them if they've got a thought. I have a thought, but.
Yeah, I mean, my thought would be stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Because the people who are anti-school are going to be anti-school. It's that 10 to 20% of the public that are going to go after you for some reason or another. This is a project that is going to greatly enhance and influence student learning for decades, if not generations to come. And I think you've really got to
That's the message.
keep and stick to that kind of messaging and not try to be something for everybody and get drawn into the weeds.
That's exactly what
Right.
I would have said.
That's it.
That the whole real reason is that we looked at this as an opportunity for a long-term impact on our community and on our students, and to provide a much more enhanced learning experience that they deserve and that we need to do. It's responsible, I think, from our perspective. We're being
It would be
responsible
irresponsible
to ignore an opportunity when
Have
we
this
had
opportunity
it.
and not do it.
I mean, I think it's really as simple as that. I do think it's irresponsible to ignore that we've had this opportunity to do this.
And I think
Right.
just from my experience in public company space, the more we can, and I know we should talk about
Right.
communication, we'll probably all go through, thank you, Carrie.
Yeah.
But to be aware of others' concerns, kind of back to maybe your point, but to really, you just got to really own the messaging. That's the positivity. I don't think that there's any need for the board to apologize to this.
I agree.
Just always spin it back. Always have that phrase or those two phrases when even if it's if you feel like you got to answer in the church or grocery store or wherever you are,
Right.
or walking your dog. Stick with the party line. Stick with
Yep.
the positivity.
And
Can you guys say
we
that
will be
party
fine.
line again? Because I kind of
Well,
want
we
to
will-
end my.
it'll
Well, that's
develop.
what I was
It'll
saying.
develop.
Jerry
I was
will
gonna
put
say,
this
yeah, I was
out.
gonna ask
It'll be
Jerry,
like
talking
2 or 3
points,
times.
and they'll give them to us,
Yes.
and that'll be part of
I
what we
think
have a
that's what we
chance to
need.
weigh in
Yeah.
on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also,
Yep.
right?
On Monday.
I think we
on
spend
the
a lot of
28th,
time
yeah.
because that's a lot of our nature and our personalities. I'm the same personality, like trying to appease everybody, trying to please
Right.
everybody. But
Which
if
is
we can just really
why
have
we
that
were having-
mindset of let's
Yeah.
own it. Hey, we are doing great stuff for the
Right.
school, and you
Right.
tell people over and over again, and the message
Right.
there will be a snowball effect to that positivity. In my
You have 10 to 20% of the public that will want to entrap you and get you to swing at a pitch in the dirt.
Right.
Don't do it.
Right.
Don't swat at flies.
So,
I think people suck.
I do too. In the interest of our time, since it's almost 9:45 now, do we want to discuss? I know we have to talk about the terms and conditions section too, or is that something we would
It is, yep.
table?
do we
or-
want
No,
feedback on the packet? Are we waiting for a different?
We probably need a revised packet.
I mean,
Coming back to us with
yeah, I
some
think-
adjusted messaging, right?
That's the note I have is, obviously for for Monday, we want to have an email communication draft ready to go, draft of a website, that has the same talking point, same communication, the social media posts, and the, tying back to the strategic plan.
Strategic plan part.
And then overall, are we going back about an hour? Are we still on the message of that the communication includes that the board has been talking about this for a while, and the park district, in a nice way, threw a curveball? Is that still
In the
included in it or no?
To the public?
That's what I'm asking.
God, that seems.
I
No,
don't think
No,
so.
just-
I don't think so,
It's
but we
just-
have to say something to the
it's
park
just
district,
selling.
right?
We're just
Is that,
like,
Well,
Aren't they gonna see
but
it?
I like the way the jury, it doesn't have to, I mean, I think he'll have to have that messaging right away to respond when the park district says something, but I liked what he said early on about there are a lot of considerations with something this big and impact to our community, and to be transparent that it's a lot of discernment and deliberation, and to be that we're being thoughtful about it, right? But we'll have to.
Do you have that, Jerry?
Right away.
I do. I've got it.
But what's the
Well,
time?
he said.
so can you say that how you said it earlier? Or I think in my mind, I guess my big question is the message that the board is selling the property, period.
I think the
There's
board
nothing about anything else.
intends to.
The board
Intends
intends to
to.
sell the property, right?
Yes.
That's the message,
Yes.
right? There's nothing else.
yes. There's
Is
no-
that what you had, Jerry?
That's what I've got. I don't think, I mean, in essence, if this wasn't a holiday week, we could have this by, Wednesday afternoon, and I think locked up. And maybe we can expedite that process tomorrow if you want to see something sooner. But this does not, even though it's a very complex issue, the message doesn't have to be complex.
Wait, you cut out there. Even though it's a what?
Complex issue.
Okay.
Even though it's a complex issue, the message doesn't have to be, and I would prefer actually that it weren't.
Right.
Okay. I can carve out time tomorrow, Jerry, to talk through this, and
And
Do
will
we-
that initial
we can have a
announcement?
draft earlier.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, go ahead.
Does the initial announcement at least likely acknowledge we're doing this in response, because there was this bid or offer, like,
That's
or
what
does it sound like
started-
we are independent, we came up with this idea
On our
and we're
own?
hopeful we'll get, like, is there a way to,
Good, great question.
Acknowledge that we've
Acknowledge
been
that there's
approached
been
in some way.
interest
Yeah, interest in.
from
It's a good
an
point.
It's a good question.
I'd like to say
In
that
other
there
words,
was
it seems
interest.
like comes
I
out of
think so
left
too.
field.
I think so too.
like, they think they can
Yeah.
come and sell this for whatever dollars?
Can we
context.
indicate that there's been interest that prompted the
Market
board to do
conditions.
the marketing conditions changed. It prompted the board to take a look at the property as it was more favorable potentially for a sale kind of thing.
And do we allude to the fact that we've evaluated, and I think it's in some of these, the enrollment stuff,
Yep.
right? Like if I'm somebody who's never heard of this, like, what? What's this property? You own it and you think you're gonna sell it? Oh, we've been approached.
Yeah.
We've had maybe you don't mention you've had an appraisal done. We've evaluated whether it would be needed for anything, and it's not. Maybe this isn't all in the first communication, but our thought process, we should get credit for the thought process.
Yeah.
I think all of that
Somehow
has to
in
live on the
something.
website, but not like
In
this
the
first
important
pass
letter.
is
Yeah.
what I think Jerry is saying.
Short
like,
and sweet.
super simple, but I think all of that, like, yes, there's an enrollment study. There was a facilities audit years ago. Like, there's the facility study we just did. We just went through the strategic planning
Yeah.
process. This is a key pillar in our strategic plan that the whole
FAQs.
community came together on.
Okay.
All that stuff will come out along the way, right?
This is a question for both Jerry and the board. But to that point, does the website house the entire enrollment study? Because someone's going to FOIA it anyway. Or does it house a summary of the enrollment report?
Oh, yeah,
Does
that's a good
the,
question.
we don't have the facilities report yet, but that'll be ready in January.
You know why I would
Hyperlink
love
to-
for the enrollment study to be on that site is because I'm so tired of people saying about how nobody's coming here
I know,
anymore,
I
and I want, like, go take a look.
I think
at
you're right.
The
Yeah,
best
you
part
get the
about that
history
enrollment
of that.
study is that our enrollment this year is identical to what they
know.
predicted 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Amazing.
It's like
And
38,
we're
80.
permitted
Is there any
to
reason
publish
not
it from
to?
Casarda?
I think it's
Yeah.
fascinating.
I don't
I'd
see
have
why
to
we
check. But I think
couldn't.
it's a FOIable document, so if someone FOIA'd that, they would
I think we
be,
can
yeah.
post it.
Yeah.
Just do a hyperlink. Doesn't have to
Right.
be.
Right. Yeah, but
I think it's great information for people.
I mean, if you look at that, shoot, where'd my document go? Look at that first page. Where's it at here? Okay, if you look at the news release, we should have. Okay.
Yeah,
It's a
So,
few
see the
pages.
news release, a few pages in.
yep. Kind of in the middle.
Does that change much? Is that the first communication?
Well, the email is the first communication, right?
Email to
Well, you
them.
would
To the
look
families?
this. I mean,
It's
I
all the
think
same. Yeah, it's. I mean, really, all these are about the same.
Well, we give a
Oh,
date
wait.
for the families and staff. We're saying that the board has initiated a seal process.
So I guess that. Okay, go to the next page where it says email the family staff.
That's what I think is
Is
the
that
first thing.
how would the
that
board
change?
like? And now this is something Jerry and I can talk about tomorrow. But how would the board like to see that changed? Because that is the talking points.
Well, maybe a slight statement that weaves in why we even considered selling property. Back to kind of Jill's point, like there was, several months ago, maybe the board was,
Well, I think
we
that middle
evaluated it.
section does it.
Does
Just
it?
saying what we would use it for.
But the
But
fact
why
that we
did it
know there's a
prompt us to
market.
sell it?
Right. I want to set this tone. We knew that there was a market, so we've been considering. This
You
wasn't
just
like
say
something
due to
we thought of
market
overnight.
conditions.
Jerry, what do you think
Yeah.
about that?
That's it.
Yeah, due to favorable market conditions, even though it sounds like the market's crap, but not from a business standpoint, probably. Yeah.
And that's all that, that says it all.
Okay.
Jerry, can you speak to that?
I don't see a downside in saying something. I don't think that opens any kind of Pandora's box. If you are generic enough about it, again, you just want to be careful that you are not experts in real estate, at least not that I know of. But to be able to say something that you've been contacted or that there's interest and you believe that there is a market for this, I think that does add credence without opening yourself up to unforeseen circumstances.
Because someone would turn that around and say, "What are you basing that on? What data do you have to?" And we
Right. Correct. You have to be generic enough about
Right.
it.
So,
And that's where the FAQ would come in on the website that would get a little bit more detailed about the CASARDA study, that we've done an assessment of our enrollment.
It says it in the one email.
Well,
Projections.
and that'll also come out in talking points in any town hall
Right,
that we
not in
have,
this first
and
one,
if we decide to do a video and all of that stuff, right?
There's
But
not an
that's what
FAQ
you get
on
into.
this,
No,
the communication calendar. Do we have one?
I think we need that as part of the Well, what were you guys proposing for the website information? Website. Gosh, there's so much information that goes with this. Here it is, website content. I really did think we would have an FAQs that might be something as simple as like, why did this board consider doing this now? Why,
When will it be over?
right, what's the time,
timeline,
how long does
just
a
a timeline.
timeline like this go, or, I don't know if it's worth putting those kinds of questions together. I'm trying to remember, there was another
as
district,
they
like the
come in, we
Arlington
can
Heights,
also-
that did
Well,
it.
then you would have yours.
Yeah, exactly. What?
yeah, well, I just, if we're looking at an email like around November 30th, like we can't be saying like obviously that we've initiated a formal sealed bid process because we're in closed session where we told
Right.
them that we weren't making any decisions. So
Right.
how, when we come out of this and on the 30th, we've made decision.
Right, so that email has to change.
Announce this.
Yeah, so that wording
intent
where it
to
says
sale.
has announced an intent to sell.
Yes. Yeah, we can't talk about the sealed bid process because that won't have
Right.
happened yet.
But I'm just also saying too that we're in a closed session where we say we aren't making the decision, but then we're announcing on the 30th that there's an intent to sell. So, and we haven't had the open discussion on it.
Can we
So we
announce
need to
before
have
the
that
board?
open discussion.
I don't know, to cover us. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
protect the board. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to,
No, I
'cause
think
we're
that's
going to be
appreciated.
scrutinized to the utmost on this.
Can you say that the administration is recommending to the board that the process be initiated? So then this is something the administration has been doing, and now it's being presented to the board for formal action.
I'm not comfortable with that. I mean,
No? Okay,
No.
okay.
no,
Bad idea.
just again,
So,
I don't
so
think
does
there's
any of this come out ahead of the agenda? Like,
right.
So I guess we're back to we have to make the December 5th closed session has to be the discussion about this, and then we can release the communications after that.
I like that.
I think that's what we're at.
But then what is that communication?
Well,
say?
then you have to go back into open, or so that you have made the decision, right? Or that you've talked about deciding something that is something big like this.
We don't vote on it.
Yeah, how do we get
Closed
this
session,
out
we
here
would vote in the
public?
public, wouldn't it?
I know.
How do we get this out there
Putting it off for
publicly
that.
without having put it on a public agenda and had discussion on it?
Yeah, that's the concern.
Can we
Yes.
Eris,
mechanically do that?
Is that possible? I think
Instead
you
of
can.
saying it's
Yeah, I think,
considering.
Yeah, that's something like that.
We're talking about.
So, yeah, you don't have to have any sort of formal board action in order to say that it's something that the board is looking at. You know what I'm saying? I think it can be that I don't know what the right language is, but the board, you might even want to talk about the history. I mean, this isn't the first time that the Lyons Township Board
over
has
the
looked
years.
at selling this property. You know, there's a history going back to the early part of this, early 2000s, and then another round after that. And here you've got some interest from the market that I think you could say maybe the administration has been evaluating and looking at the demographic information, but you don't need action by the board in order to say this is something you're interested in. I'm not sure how you phrase that, but
So then in like this email, that whole first paragraph, instead of being definitive that we've initiated a formal sealed bid process, we just say something along the lines of what was just shared, and that is considering and will be discussing in upcoming meetings.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we haven't made decisions.
Right.
We
Okay.
just really discussed.
Yeah, I
it.
think
Is
yep.
considering and will be discussing in upcoming meetings an intent to sell, or
the potential for
what's the wording there?
listing.
process for selling.
Yep. The process for selling the district's Willow Springs property.
Because that includes the auction and how we're going to do it. I like that.
So
Mic
yeah,
drop.
so it's got Board of Education is considering and will be discussing in upcoming meetings the process for selling the district's Willow Springs property. And then the rest of that, no, the property is
About what
located
we-
near 79th Street.
Yeah, and what we would do with it.
And now the next paragraph, is it okay to still say that? The district plans to use proceeds from this potential sale, add the word potential?
We'll discuss.
What's that?
I mean, how about we would discuss?
Proceeds.
Because we don't have a plan yet.
Right.
In the event of a potential sale, the district plans to, the district would.
Right.
Would discuss.
Well, I think it's
Why
fair-
it's legal of us be planning, right? I mean, we're just.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say
Doing
why
any-
why would we even consider it? Well, obviously we know we could do. I mean, I don't think that's.
But maybe that's when we actually come to the table, that's when we're not going to do any of those because we're going to tear the school down and do something else. I don't know. But, I mean, that was something that came up in our meeting.
I mean, right now it just says,
LTCAC.
yeah. Right now it just says the district plans to use proceeds from the sale to make key investments and upgrades to our facilities.
Potential sale.
Right.
So just
This
add
is
potential
would
in there,
plan
or would
to-
plan.
Right.
Or something.
But I also think, though, we have to
Sale.
talk about it to see what we're going to do. So I would want to be thoughtful in that regard.
Include, examples include, or
Because
Somehow
we
note
haven't
that
really
it's not
gotten the study back from the LTCAC where we had that meeting
Yeah.
talking about that. We're like very presumptuous as to what we would be
tie
doing.
it to the strategic plan.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
She's right. That's what the
Yeah.
strategic
It
plan is all
all,
about.
that is our North Star
Right.
from here on out.
Right,
We
right,
Tie it to the
right.
strategic plan.
Right.
I think
And Jerry
just
will do that.
condition the language enough.
Would Jerry like
Woulds and coulds, or
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep. I feel like with Jerry, you and I tomorrow, with less than a half hour, we could revise this email in a draft form.
Okay.
Again, it goes to like coulds and woulds versus will and have.
would the email and the press release go out at the same time?
The
Jerry, can you talk about that? Probably, right?
The way that this works now, it's doing it at the same time. There really isn't a downside to it. I would say years ago, I would like to communicate just with families first, and then go media second. But this could be in the newspaper's hands within 5 seconds. As
Yes,
it is.
and it
So,
would, with the subset that Michael described, they're quick to light up.
yeah,
So-
simultaneous is fine.
Can we consider, this is just when I'm reading this, some of the plans include, can we consider HVAC a little lower on the list? I feel like we've been talking about HVAC so much. That's not a wow for me, and it's not, I feel like we have the money to do that with or without selling this property, and I like it in there, but I like it lower on the list. I'd prefer to see development of collaborative spaces above the HVAC systems. Would that be okay with everybody?
I mean, I think
And
everyone's
I
going to
also
pull
would like-
apart what they deem priority, right?
Right, but I
Anybody who
just
gets
don't
it's
want to
gonna
see that.
glow
I
up.
agree.
I like
I
the
just feel like,
accessibility.
I'm all for
Yeah.
HVAC, but I feel like
Higher?
Sure.
that's been.
So we have a reorder on that?
Because
I
to
would
me,
agree.
that's,
Well, so what would the
Okay.
board like to see number one?
I like the
Accessibility.
modernization of bathrooms.
I like, no, and then for number 2, I like accessibility and life safety upgrades, because I think the fact that we are not fully accessible and that some of our students have to go around the mountain to get to where they need to go is not okay.
What would be 3?
Collaborative spaces.
The rest
No,
is
we'll
fine,
see
just
it.
move HVAC.
That's
I don't
just
wanna
my
do that
opinion. She
second.
just want to do it second.
Don't want to do what
So
second?
HVAC
Accessibility.
is the,
You don't want to?
No.
Where do you want it?
Third,
Behind what?
any development of,
Anything. Wow.
no, I think the accessibility and life safety upgrades is going to be, it's really part of modernizing our
it's
classrooms.
for the-
So it kind of goes to number
Why?
2 to me.
Oh
my gosh.
That's just,
Gotta
if
figure it
you're
out.
the,
Let me know.
but then they're the assholes.
Okay, what's wrong? Let's just, can we, guys, again, I still go back, as long as we're covering, that people are going to glom on to whatever they see that stands out and means to them. But I like the idea of the modernization as being one, and then I think that number 2 is accessibility and life safety upgrades. I think that's part of what modernizes our classrooms.
Well, it was
too,
interesting, this
you know?
LTCAC thing that we talked about.
Right.
It wasn't just for kids in a wheelchair. It would be someone that broke their leg.
Right.
Or someone that had a sprain. And those are the kids, like we had somebody a student at our table that was talking about that. Like, my mind went to the kid that's always in the wheelchair,
Right.
right? Accessibility.
Right.
But these kids went to, I sprained my ankle and now I got to walk 5 flights of stairs up in my, they were only
And
thinking
Lord
about
knows we have a
themselves.
ton of that
Well,
happening, probably.
You know what I mean? But there's probably a lot of that. Like, it wasn't, my mind thought something totally different than what they all thought at the table. I mean, with the accessibility was to all the kids, like, hey, I break my arm, and you know what I mean? Or something.
can I just say it? I don't want this to be all about like a big diversity, like I don't want it to be, I don't want the sale,
You want to sell it to everybody.
get wrecked.
I don't want this to get
What if you flip
the
the
taken
order
off the
of life
weeks
safety
to
upgrades?
just go another
Well, because-
diversity is
yeah,
going to cost
I know what you're
us
saying.
80 million. I'm just saying put one more thing in front of it so that it's,
And what if you switched, like Julie just said, life safety upgrades and accessibility? And then you're saying
I would just put
accessibility
it third.
second.
Just put something.
I can get on board with that.
I hear what you're
And-
saying.
and-
Does anybody
I'm
else
on board with
though?
that.
ADA's been out there a long time.
I know. I'm
Right?
just,
You're right. It's
so
not
over that.
earth shattering, is it? It's not like we're
Nothing
asking.
else from
And we do have really strong needs for that stuff. But I mean, just like the nursing staff.
I would
need
just
it
put it
too.
third.
These are the,
You moved it up.
Well,
too.
we'll get a chance to weigh into.
Carrie's
I don't
quote
care
would
that
have to
much.
come out, right?
Anyway.
So I
I think.
So I have this right,
Is my quote in
or
there?
did I miss this?
I thought
But
that was
modernization, then collaborative spaces,
No, you're
then
right.
accessibility, then athletic spaces, then HVAC.
Fine.
That's fine.
What were the
Yeah,
first
that's
2?
fine.
Sorry,
So
modernization.
modernization, then collaborative spaces, then
Yes.
accessibility, then athletic spaces, then
And
HVAC.
at the end of the day, when we actually go to put this stuff in plan, it may fall totally different, right?
Right,
Based
right.
on what's available and.
Right.
I mean, like, it won't necessarily go in that order.
No, but I
You know,
appreciate,
All right.
it's all about
I
the
get
wording. I don't want
you
people
don't
to
want.
fight diversity.
Yeah.
Okay, I took
you
a
don't want
picture of it
to-
on the board.
I don't want diversity to cost.
Right, right. But I thought they did down this because they won a number of awards for
I'm picking you
collaborative
up.
spaces.
Picking it up.
They have amazing
Okay,
collaborative
it is.
spaces.
And it looked like
Um,
down in the south.
I had one other
Really
spot.
good.
It's awesome.
Right. I was like, I took a
All right,
picture.
Okay.
Allison has another.
No, I
thought.
We're here for you, Allison.
Okay, sorry.
no, I don't, I don't,
Okay.
no, that's all right. Moving this, we were talking about you could get this done, not before Thanksgiving though, or would this be a before Thanksgiving thing, are we thinking, or after?
Announcement. I don't think it's possible.
We were targeting
Yeah,
the 30th
what's the
or
ideal,
1st.
because I forgot where we landed on
It'll be
that.
Monday,
What's the
the
ideal
28th.
date to send
No,
out
that's
this
when we're
email
getting a draft
and have the website ready.
for us to read.
Yeah, but
I
you
thought-
I think they just said we're moving it up sooner. We're gonna
Oh,
get a
sorry.
draft tomorrow. Okay, hold on, let's back up. The
I'm
things
sorry.
that I think we need before we can that we have to have in place before we can talk about this with anybody outside of these four walls is we need a communication to our families and the staff. We need a PR release that goes out simultaneously, and we need a website presence. We have to have a website to drive people to go to that will answer some of those questions. And I think for me, what's missing is some of those FAQs. I don't think we'll have all the questions that people might ask us, but could we have some of them?
Do we need any before the board's discussed anything though?
What would those questions
All
look
right,
like?
maybe that's a
if
good
we were
point.
gonna,
Maybe
if we were
we're
gonna,
prepping this,
Well-
and then we meet on
Yeah, I guess
5th
you're
and
right.
maybe something.
You're right. Maybe then the website link just takes you back to the press release.
well, I mean,
That's all the
Jerry,
information
please
we
weigh
have.
in, but I feel like the website could have some short description at the top that says, this will be the place where documents and information will
Yes.
be posted around the website. In the meantime, here's the press release.
Right.
Do we want to post enrollment study? We really don't
Yes.
have the facility thing yet to post. What else would go on that website, Jerry?
Anything without violating confidentiality about timeline and what this process has looked like. But it doesn't have to, websites for projects like this, this would be similar to like a referendum campaign. They're living documents. And so I wouldn't worry too much about it looking like a finished product on December 5th, especially with FAQs, because the majority of FAQs happen after your announcement.
Yeah. Yep.
Because you're responding. And so you'd also want to have some place on that website where people can connect with you directly.
So
Okay.
I think to Jill's point, though, we have to, the email communication has to tie to the strategic plan. Because right
Yep.
now, it's just,
So it's goal 5.
yeah, let's go 5.
It's goal 5.
Yeah,
So,
it's
and you
really
don't have to
simple.
get into the weeds. I mean, nobody,
Yeah.
they've already had this
They've seen
over and
it.
over again, but
Right.
this is bringing it to life
Yep.
right now.
Yep.
And so this is when
And we can link
we
it
have
to the
this.
strategic plan website.
Yeah.
Just provide links to that, because that's got all the information on there.
So why would we want to put this out right quick on like Monday? What is there an elegance to putting this out on a, I don't know, Good News Day, Wednesday, if our agenda is being published on Friday? Like, once this is out there, Carrie can't work anymore, right? And it's all phone calls and
Oh, maybe. But I do
And-
think they'll
But
be
it's-
less.
But
Didn't
like
we
what-
say the 30th or the
The most
1st?
transparency we can
30th
do.
is Wednesday, the 1st is Thursday.
We
The
would not
agen-
do this on a Friday.
No, right, and the Friday is when the agenda goes out with the topic on there. So maybe it's 2 days prior.
I think Wednesday
You guys
the
are more the
30th.
experts in this, but is
I
it,
think Wednesday the 30th.
which is
fine.
2 days prior to the agenda? Oh,
Yes.
we told you Wednesday.
Yes.
The agenda, now
And
2
it's
days later,
gonna
here's
say
the
in
agenda.
upcoming
We're gonna talk
meetings,
about
so-
it. Then Monday's meeting, we talk about
Yes.
it.
But is there any
That's-
reason not to give it earlier than that?
What do you want to have what's the advantage in your mind?
Transparency and just putting it
If
out
we
there.
have it, why
I
not
mean,
put
if
it
it's
out?
ready.
I feel like
Just
if we
quick
put it out,
question. I
I'm
think I
concerned
lost
about
sight
the delta
of
between
what-
that date and the
what's the
5th
board-
when we're actually talking about it.
I
And
think
having that
Jerry
be
had-
somewhat narrow.
Jerry had said, get it out.
Jerry, you talked about that earlier, right? The transparency piece?
Yeah, get it out. I mean, well, first of all, you never want to do something on a Friday like this
Right.
unless you're trying to subvert it, and you're not.
No.
And so you're avoiding the Friday news dump, and if that's when the agenda comes out, then backdating it, back mapping it 48 hours makes you look good, I think.
okay, so
Any
but we're back
earlier
to
than
the
that,
30th.
though?
Yeah, Allison's saying, is it any earlier? I would not do it before Thanksgiving holiday because that looks just the same as
Right.
doing it
I mean,
on
we're down to
Friday.
Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. And I just was thinking, there's gonna be there goes Carrie's week, honestly, right? In
Potentially.
some ways. And I was thinking the less time that between when it's out there and when December 5th shows up, which is when we're talking about it on the agenda. It's just less hassle, and it's not material. But I'm not a PR expert, so Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday sound like our possible dates from.
So,
think we
I
might
mean,
even
Jerry,
stick
you
with
call it whatever is best for us.
Well, if this is about strategic planning about when to maximize the most views on something, Monday morning at 6 a.m. is the optimal. If you don't want to have your inbox flooded that entire day, then I think Wednesday around noon certainly serves the purpose and gets it out there in enough time. It might not maximize your views and give you another 2 days of the phone ringing off the hook. So you have to evaluate that, but that's what that looks like.
I just don't know if this group
how
can get
quickly.
it
Well, that's.
started.
Why don't we see how quickly this comes together? You're doing. You're
we may
clearing
not have
time
time
and
to do
doing a
that.
working session.
I think we will have a
tomorrow.
draft by tomorrow afternoon.
And the draft will include any updates to the PR release, if there's been any.
No, I was just talking about a draft to the email communication that was going on. We can have a draft tomorrow afternoon on that.
Email and the news release.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Yeah, I want both of those things in
yeah.
tandem, and then
Yeah.
just a quick hit list, Brian, of what you think the web page content would.
So right now,
would
what I
include.
have is the enrollment study, some tie to the strategic plan,
Yes.
and some description about this is the place you're going to go for property information in the
Yes.
future. And that's
yes, and it's going to be very
it.
simple.
Very simple.
And it'll be
Yes.
Kind of
called
like
Willow
less is
Springs
more.
Property microsite, or will it, again, we haven't decided on the sale,
I
so I
think
was just being
in the
sensitive.
plan it was called, there was a, it's further back, but there was a graphic selling the District 204 Willow Springs property.
That's so.
Which I don't know if selling's a little presumptuous
I
on day
know.
one. I'm just cautious back to the board hasn't assembled. We're
So do
exploring
Is there a
you,
this.
better
right?
term
So if
for
there's
that?
a graphic on the website,
I think it could be modified to that
Yeah.
once
Yeah.
there's a
Sell
plan.
exploration or
just what if it says Willow Springs property?
District 204 Willow Springs property expiration.
Sure.
What do you think, Jerry?
I like
Jerry?
Ryan knows pulling it out.
Yeah, I need to think about
Oh,
that. Are you thinking about it as a subject line, headline, both?
No, it's kind of like that. I can't remember what page.
Website banner.
It's like
It
basically
would
the
be a
third to
graphic.
last page.
I
It's,
like
it's the
that.
website banner that will go on the front of the website. Right now it says selling the District 204 Willow Springs property, but the thought is just changing that to
It's like a tile on the homepage,
yeah,
Jerry. We
that
always
you
have,
click.
Right.
yeah, those
I
those
like
graphics.
Why don't you just not even exploration, just District 204 Willow Springs property?
I think I would do, yeah, less is more. You haven't
So
said
we don't know if
anything
we're
about what's
exploring. They're
going
gonna be
on.
like they already explored it. There's a lot
Yeah.
more to pick apart.
Yeah.
We explored it for like 3 hours.
So the graphic then, Jerry, would just say District 204 Willow Springs property. That's it.
That's fine.
That's
fine. Okay.
I think that's fine. Okay. We have to discuss terms and conditions, do we not? Or is that should we discuss that?
Eris, should the board discuss?
I think we could probably talk about it on the 5th in closed session, and then whatever changes are going to be made between the 5th and the 19th, those can be made. So if you want to talk about it tonight, I've got them right in front of me, but I don't think it's urgent to discuss it tonight. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Could you just go over them really quick so we can think about it before we do that?
Yeah, of course. And we had talked about this last time, but what we sort of soft landed on is a sealed bid process where these sophisticated buyers are going to come in and make their best offer. Currently, it's written with a minimum purchase price of $65 million, earnest money of $500,000. They'd have the right to inspect the property the entire time. Once it's a contract, they would have 120 days to essentially determine whether it's a suitable site. Like, can the soil bear the types of improvements and roadways that they would need to utilize the property the way they want to utilize it. Once you get to the end of that feasibility period, $100,000 of the earnest money becomes non-refundable. You then roll into the approval period, which we've got as 210 days. That's where they would actually go before the village and seek all the necessary, zoning changes, special use permits, variations, permits, etc. And this might end up being like a planned unit development, like an industrial PUD, that it might go that way, where instead of sort of fitting it into the current zoning scheme of the village, they would essentially create like a new zoning scheme for this 70 or 80 acre piece, depending on how much of it is ultimately developed. At that point, if they want to extend the approval period, they could do so, but it would cause another $50,000 of the earnest money to become non-refundable. And then at the end of the approval period, another $100,000 becomes non-refundable. At that point, we don't get to the end of the approval period unless they've got their approvals. I've got some language in here that would preclude any kind of a TIF incentive. So, one thing Bridge has been clear about, and a lot of new development is going this way, is that they'll want the Class 6B incentive, which allows for a 10% level of assessment for the first 10 years, and then it clicks up to 15% in year 11, 20% in year 12, and then at the end of the 12-year period, it goes back to 25. 25% is the normal Class 5B level of assessment, but they've said they would pursue a 6B on this, but we would say they couldn't get a TIF. And then the rest of the document really just talks about when the closing would occur, their opportunity to review title, survey, real estate transfer taxes. There shouldn't be any because the seller is a governmental entity, the school districts. Our representations as the seller, their representations as the buyer. The fact that they're going to buy it sort of as is, where is, no representations or warranties whatsoever by the school district. That's the gist of it.
And I was just thinking, I mentioned this to Brian earlier, I was thinking out loud about just, with the sale then of the property, that's going to be a new board that's going to then have that money and make those decisions, correct? Because we aren't going to be able to outline or have any of those conversations. Like, just a thought of like, is there, just thinking ahead if like there would be a reason for us to want to put a percentage of the sale proceeds into like reserves or something like that. That would have to be something that was discussed with the future board, assuming.
Yeah,
right?
the closing date with all the, assuming the earliest closing date, if they took them, well, let's say they didn't extend anything, sounds like it's next winter or early 2024 by the time all this happens. Is that right, Eris?
Yeah, it would be probably the soonest realistically. They don't have to use all 120 days for feasibility. They don't have to use all 210. But if they did, that's 11 months right there. So if this becomes a firm contract at the end of January, you're talking end of 2023, January 2024, when you'd actually have a closing. And then, at that point, if there's a closing, that means they've gotten all the approvals they want. The project is really ready to go. It's just a matter of starting to, move the earth and do their work. So
it'll be a while before we get that.
Yeah, it will. Okay. Yeah, just putting it out there. Spot. Okay. So I think we better next up.
Should we talk about terms and conditions at the next meeting?
Yeah, we're going to do that on the 5th, but Allison
Okay.
we talked about possibly doing it after our committee of the whole meeting on December 5th. Is that doable? So, sorry?
I know I have to look this.
That way we won't have to do it early and feel
No, that's
rushed. We can
better.
talk after.
But then how do we address it in the committee of the whole meeting?
Yeah, what's the
we have
agenda
to.
topic in the meeting? Not the specifics of terms and conditions, but is the agenda topic exploration of the sale and we have a
as
dialogue?
it's listed? How we list it in the agenda, you mean?
Oh, you
We're
mean
going to
we
have to talk about it. That's the whole point of doing
At the committee of the whole.
Yeah, the committee of the whole. So
You're right.
Is it a
just have to think
conversation where
through-
maybe
Or
it's
we can
carried?
we could do a
Do
closed
the
session
study.
at 6. I'll just come in late. 6:10 or whatever. That's all.
Well,
Alright.
that's,
Well, I
maybe
think
that's
we
the
have to do
confusion.
it-
Is the topic on the open session agenda item as new business, or is it a closed? I thought we were saying it'd be an open session.
Well, now
Not the
that
terms
you're
and
announcing
conditions.
Not
it
the terms
before
and
the
conditions,
12/5,
but- Okay.
like we have to.
You're right. We do have to have some kind of discussion about
at
it.
the 12/5 meeting.
Yeah, what would we really be?
we're going to
Before we were thinking like if we weren't having something, but we're announcing this before 12/5. We have to talk about it in some form. So maybe you talk about the study,
the preparation of what we
Announce it,
did.
not
Yeah.
discuss.
We're just talking about terms and conditions that probably doesn't need to be, that could be a closed session topic
That part
too.
would be closed session afterwards.
But talking in
Yeah.
open, can we have Carrie make
Yeah.
a statement and not have big
A
discussion.
big discussion
No,
about
you're
it.
going to have all the people.
Right.
It's agenda related,
It'll be
about
right?
that.
It's going to weigh down the first part of
It
the meeting,
will,
which is
you're right,
fine.
you're right.
But this is, guys, we got to pick our battles. Like
Sure,
we
sure.
wanted to be transparent. We want to put it
You're
out
right,
there. And
yeah.
be,
Then we're gonna have to
then we
do
gotta,
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And
it's a
I
discussion.
think
What we're-
does it make sense to have? I don't want to say a disingenuous conversation, but maybe it's Carrie or any of us leading a discussion on, and then we got to figure out what we can say. Do we say like after being approached by a confidential
Right.
or by an entity
Right.
that I will not name or whatever?
The board decided to engage in,
Maybe
can we
just
can
a
talk about the
statement.
study,
We
right?
don't have to have a discussion.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I think we're going to need some legal advice on this because how, I just want to make sure that, I guess, number one, that administratively we prepare anything we need to prepare for the meeting. If it's
Yeah.
just a board discussion, then we wouldn't need to prepare anything.
No
but then,
slides. We need to have like
Guides
parameters
about
of what
what
we
we
can
can
and cannot
say.
talk about.
right, that's what I mean, like get some guidance, legal guidance on
This is such an uncharted
what
territory.
can we
I don't really-
discuss in open session about the process that the board has gone through the last 7 months. That's what I would be, I need to make sure. Eris, can you talk to that?
Yeah, I think because the agendas have not included the language about purchase, sale, or lease of real property, I think we want to be a little careful in terms of how much we say the board has discussed. I think it could be positioned, Brian, to the extent you're comfortable with this, that the administration has provided, done certain due diligence, getting a demographic study and evaluating facility needs. And then you provided that information to the board, which is true. You have done that. And phrase it that way as opposed to, there's been extensive board discussions in closed session. I think that invites somebody to go back and look at agendas and say, hey, wait a minute, I don't see purchase, sale, or lease of real property on as a reason for closed session. So that might be the way to present it. But if the FAQ is out, if the parent and family communication's out, you're going to have some people showing up for public comment. And I think, you've got to have some statement that the board president can make saying, this is kind of where we are in the process. And you can say we were approached in the spring by a developer. The board's been approached in prior instances as well. This seems like a very, serious approach that caused us to do X, Y, and Z. And now the board is considering putting the property up for sale through a sealed bid process, which is a permitted way of disposing of school district property under Illinois law. And maybe do something like that, but Carrie, in your words, obviously, not my words,
Right,
No, but
right,
using
right.
a lot of those words.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I'd like to make sure we cover under Illinois law and the whole, I almost want to see this as a statement.
Yeah, I mean,
we're
I
covered.
would feel comfortable, Eris, if you could actually draft that
Yeah,
because
me too.
Okay, sure.
the other part, and I get the nuance there, right? So I could, isn't it though, technically, it would be in preparation for tonight's December 5th open discussion or discussion on the property. In your packet, the board noticed the enrollment study, and that's really all we have. That's a problem. Like, I could speak to the fact that in preparation for the discussion, we are also in the middle of a facility study that will be more finalized, not a great word, but more finalized in January. But the initial feedback from survey, from staff focus groups, administrative review, LTCAC focus group, like all those steps indicate that these are the bullet points of facility updates that are necessary, or that are desired, I should say.
Well,
Something like that. I mean,
you've
I would
done
probably
an
script that
enrollment
up.
study before. That's something that happens on a
Yep.
somewhat cyclical basis, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's not weird that it's time to do that anyway.
Yeah.
And again, the
Strategic.
I mean,
strategic plan.
Yeah.
yeah,
So we're doing a goal.
is-
We're not doing a goal 5 update that now. We're doing a goal 3 and a goal 4
Well, that doesn't matter.
Yeah, but
though.
we
It's
can. But
just
it
saying,
can tie
like,
to the. Yeah.
this kind of
yeah,
stuff comes up.
Yeah.
It is in lockstep with
Yep.
Maybe it
the
is a
strategic
goal 5
plan.
update
Yes.
Some of
from our
this stuff
side
was
of it.
already in the works, some
Yeah.
of it wasn't, but
Yeah.
now.
Well, maybe
we're-
it is a goal 5 mentioned, but it comes out of the board, and like comes from the board, obviously, initiating this conversation. So, I mean,
Again, I would just script this out exactly what, and,
Yeah.
and,
I
and
know, it
basically
needs to
lay
be
the
very tightly
groundwork,
scripted, but-
and then you guys would.
Yeah.
And then the action, like the only action we will be taking is to approve terms and conditions at the December 19th meeting? There's not action to say we're exploring, or there's not action, like,
Right, Eris? There's no action on that.
No, those are not action items. The
Yeah.
only action item will be on the 19th, something along the lines of consideration and approval of resolution initiating sealed bid process. Yeah, and I've got the exact title of the resolution, but it'll be along those lines. That is the one and only board action item until we get to the January 23rd meeting, where you are then approving that particular high bidder, at which point we have an executed agreement, and then the ball is with the village and the high bidder.
and so it may be brief at
So we're
committee
not
of the
doing
whole.
much.
A little Brian,
I think
a
so.
statement by Carrie.
And not much discussion.
I was gonna say.
And
which
nothing
is
from
gonna
us.
not
seem
much to
strange.
discuss, yeah, but
Such a big deal.
Dawn hasn't been here at all for this.
And it's really like
I'm just saying,
it's a
she's
pu-
not been here for any of
just
this
so I
conversation.
understand, like
This
the
is a lot of
purpose really is a
information.
public exercise
You're gonna have a phone
to show
Yeah.
transparency, right?
Yeah.
Like that. The purpose of December 5th is a public exercise to.
Yeah.
We have already released a statement. The board will be able to publicly discuss on the 5th, and it lays the groundwork for the action on the 19th.
But that we're not having any, we're not going to discuss it ad nauseam.
And you don't want us to, oh, it sounds good, I support it, go team
Okay,
commentary.
well, then the whole board needs to be on the same
Yeah.
page. So, but somebody's gonna have to read Dawn in on everything as to what was talked about tonight in this direction.
Yeah,
I mean, I
I'll
could
say
tell her, but I think
anecdotally,
it also,
mean,
we could use some support, I think,
This
from
is a
other members.
PR
Sounds
piece
good,
as
you
well,
know.
but I think
Happy
it's
to help.
important. This
I'll
is
help you.
one
Thank
issue the
you.
board wants to be 100% unanimous on.
Can I make a suggestion? Maybe have 2 closed sessions for this meeting. Have a short one prior to the commencement of the meeting, where we kind of talk about what Brian Waterman is saying here, which is you're going to listen to public comments. The board president is going to read a statement, and that might be the extent of it. But at least you're going to talk about it. And then at the end of the meeting, we go into closed session, and if you want to do a deep dive on terms and conditions and some of the other information, we can do it without time pressure of people waiting to attend a meeting.
Right.
Would that be a possibility? Do 2, a short one, and then
Yeah,
a more
I like it.
longer session?
Allison, can you get?
I'll get here like
Okay.
6:05 or
Okay.
whatever, but
Okay.
I'll be here.
Okay.
But you start and then I think for looks to everything, that'll be better.
So I've got before will be discuss my and Carrie's statement, and
Right.
then after will be
so
discuss
that
the
you guys will
terms and
know what's
conditions.
going on. Yeah.
All right?
And then in the meantime, I guess we're bringing Dawn up to speed on this conversation.
Do you want me to? I've never really spoken to Dawn one-on-one. I'm happy to talk with her.
I'm gonna call her.
Like,
Again,
Tommy.
okay.
So, Allison, Jill,
I may be speaking with her anyway, although she was,
where is she? Do
She's in
we
New
even know
York
when she'll
City.
be back? Like, when would we have that conversation with her?
And what's the
probably
conversation
reachable.
going to be?
Just to say really quick what we discussed here, and
This.
yeah,
we're all,
can we summarize
well,
this?
I
though?
mean, I think.
This has been an hour and a
I
half
think
discussion.
It's
2 hour
probably best
discussion?
achieved some of this might be best achieved in the closed session ahead of.
Yeah, I know.
meeting.
I think it will too.
That
And
might be-
maybe that's what we'll say. We'll talk a little bit more in detail.
Informally,
I can
one
call
on
her with that.
one person,
Yeah, informally, that's better.
and then just have it beforehand and after.
So I would say, since I've never spoken to her, it might be better to have Allison.
I was
Yeah,
say,
I can definitely, I'll
Yeah.
just say, hey, here's what.
all right, Allison, you call her
Yeah.
as VP, but I can call too if she has any other questions. And I think it's a good idea if we're going to be able to discuss this. Bring her as quickly up to speed as we can before the meeting.
Deal.
Okay? Okay? Sound good? That sounds good. Okay. All right.
Did we need to go back to, I promised I'd revisit it, the first part of the meeting, which is informing Pleasantdale
Park
Park
District.
District let's pretend this release is going out. Let's just pick Wednesday because this group loves to comment. Just be ready, Jerry. Ooh, in a good way. We love to comment.
Yes,
so I'm
yes,
just saying,
yes.
I don't know if we'd be ready by
No.
Monday, with the holiday being Monday 6 a.m. release.
Sure.
So if we released it Wednesday at noon, playing with that timeline, what's the response to Pleasantdale and when?
Wouldn't they just get it with everybody else?
15
Or you still
minutes
wanna
ahead of
give-
it, an hour ahead of it, that morning, whatever, 4 hours ahead?
What do we owe them really as far as a response? They know,
I think if you got a
That we were
personal
gonna-
phone call, you could, I mean, I recognize this is unusual, but if you had a personal conversation with parties
Arlene,
involved.
but that was just, she was not the park district, she was just there.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're
but
talking
if
about
you,
Carrie?
like, you pick up the phone and have the conversation.
With her? Before they read it.
Well, I don't know if you can do
Well, I
it.
think the factors to consider here are the official inquiry came from the park district, so there probably has to be some official response to the park district,
Right.
either
Yeah.
right before or right after. And then I think the conversation with the school district is more informal,
Right.
right
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Because that's
And they're
it's
the
not
ones
been
that
like
own the
it,
land.
the park district,
Right.
yeah. So school district is just
Right.
before or right, you probably want to call Arlene because you had that conversation with her last week, and I can certainly talk to the superintendent.
And,
right
and
before.
I just want to be clear what exactly I'm telling her, that,
What is that message?
yeah.
I mean, if
what
you're
it-
calling her Wednesday morning and it's going out Wednesday noon, I don't think there's a big risk of you saying, hey, we're putting out some information, the school's putting out, or the board's putting out information later today, which will, I think, offer some context around the discussion we had the other day. And maybe
Okay.
you say it's going to say that the board is taking steps to explore a sale. Don't know if that's news to you or not. We haven't talked about it, but
Okay.
we think there's likely a way. We think there could be a path to
Right.
what you would like, but it's
It's
a
gonna-
lot of steps from here.
Right.
And
It will probably be something that maybe something you wouldn't be discussing with us as much as you'll be discussing with
the
developer,
potential new
potential buyer.
There you go.
That might be too much to say at the end.
But I do.
That's what I'm
think-
saying. I mean, it's
that's
very easy to
helpful.
get into too much to say and not too much to
I
say.
just-
so.
let her know what a favor you're doing her and the mess. I mean, that's seriously part of all
just
those
wanted to give you a
messages.
heads up.
I know,
as
I
a
know.
trusted community member, as a trusted
right.
school partner. No, you tell them what. No, I'm not kidding you
Well, I
guys.
know,
You're
but
giving
can
me
you
this
give her a
list.
script? I'm sorry to add more.
No,
Like, just like a little blurb.
And Jerry probably has great ideas, but I'm happy to try to type up a blurb. But again, you tell them how you're helping that
For
person
sure.
out, and you didn't have to do it.
But I
without
think that will
telling
be
you.
helpful to have something in front of us when we all talk about it, of what we can say and what, because it's going to be a hot topic.
And when the reporters
Well,
call
in the
each of
spring.
us, you'd send them to Carrie, right? Let's just revisit that.
Can I make a recommendation here? I wonder if it doesn't make sense, in order to really stick to the message for both the park district and the school district, to actually draft a response that goes to them right before this goes public. That way there's not a conversation,
That's
there's
why I
not,
think it's, I like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
I'm thinking especially for the park
Like we
district.
put a formal
Like,
something to get a
we
response.
send
I
them
think so,
something,
too.
because whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I like
rather
I did
than
not
call
promise
them-
to
Yeah.
Arlene that I would follow up with her.
They
for
might
what
not
it's
be
worth.
reachable.
I mean,
You missed your chance.
I only told her that I was going to bring this
I just think
information
like
to you
less
guys
is
on
more,
Monday.
because I just worry about like when we, you know, go forward in the spring with elections. Like it will be, I would
Because
like.
I mean,
Yeah,
and I guess I
say
throw that
that's-
out there because at some point it's going to be public that the board was approached by the park district,
Right.
and being able to have a
No, I
written
wanted
down,
Right.
so that there's no rumors later on that, well, I heard that the
Yeah,
board,
right.
then there's a written statement that the
Go ahead,
board
send it,
can.
yeah.
Because
Send it
they're
out within
just
a tight
saying, "Hey, I
window.
don't know
It's
what-
going to be FOIA.
I don't know.
Yep,
what I can
yep,
say,
exactly.
And then they can see
How
it.
soon can I tell her?
Yeah.
We gave
I
them
want
a
my
2-hour
timing. I don't want
courtesy,
to call
4-hour
her
courtesy.
Right.
soon.
You're right.
45
You need to
minutes.
put in writing to both of them.
Yep.
And I think that'll be helpful
Before
for
we
all
send
of us
out this
going forward.
message.
Right.
Smart, Brian.
Like,
So
they don't call you
release
superintendent for anything, do they?
I'm sure, yeah.
to both, and we'll draft those up too.
But
So
I-
Jerry, did you
Brian,
hear
I
that?
think you can get.
I did, yep.
Yep. So we'll have to we'll just have to
I don't-
draft
I can't.
I think it's
I know,
a couple
I don't-
sentences at most.
Right.
A message from the District 204 board to the 107 board and to the Park District board.
Okay.
And I can call Arlene just before we.
No.
I don't think.
Oh, no,
we
we're
don't
just
want
gonna send
you
it?
to do that. No.
All right,
It's
that's
gonna be
fine.
an email.
They're gonna draft communication that will go to both at the same time.
And it'll come from
can it
the
come from
board's
you or the
email.
board?
From the
It'll
board.
come from the board
Come
email.
from the board.
You don't like
Yeah,
that?
definitely. For both, it would
No,
come.
it's
It would
okay.
come from this board
I know
to
what
the
you're
Park
saying.
District board, and this board
it's
to
more
the
personal?
107 board.
Yeah.
In trouble for anything. And
Just
that's
an
what I'm
No,
paranoid.
I'm sorry, I don't want to
about us
drag, but I
being-
think they were trying to avoid because like a lot of this is going to be potentially FOIA'd.
Yeah.
That
It helps.
it doesn't get into them personal conversations that
Yeah.
were had that then may look at more suspicious.
Got it.
It's leaving a audit trail, paper trail of our thoughtfulness and, it's, yeah, right? It'll get out there.
All right. This is late, guys. It's
I know, we're
10:30.
exhausted.
I'm sorry. Everyone's starting to get a little mushy.
I could go for
Thanks,
another
you guys
3 hours.
Thanks, you guys, for hanging
Good
on.
night.
What?
I don't have to fly out tomorrow.
I'm just starting to get a little early.
Yeah, because it's
All right.
Thanksgiving.
Oh.
Appreciate
All right.
the folks on the phone.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Yeah,
very
thanks,
much.
Eris. Thanks, Jerry, for hanging with us.
You're welcome. Oh, sure. Welcome.
All right,
It's a
Jerry,
big
we'll talk.
issue, so
we'll
we
talk
appreciate
tomorrow.
it. It's a lot.
Okay. All right. Good night, folks.
Thanks,
Take care.
guys.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye-bye. Bye now.
I mean, and I know people think we may think that this is a whole lot to deal with
sure.
and to do, and so
grateful
that's
you're
why.
thinking through
These guys
all that
off.
stuff.
I can't believe you
I
thought
really
that was a
am.
good
catch on the agenda.
Ended. Okay.
Should we,
Oh, I would not have even thought
We
of
have to go
it.
back in open session. So
We do,
Well, we
but
can keep. I mean,
we-
we don't. We
there's-
can keep
we-
in closed session if the board wants to keep
No,
talking.
I'm tired.
Okay. So
I think the
Sorry.
only thing I would add is that, I feel like we're being very thoughtful. I don't think there's any ill will here. Everybody's looking to
No,
do the
we're
right
not
thing
trying to
by
do
our
that.
board. I think that when you add outside factors coming into it, that we're being concerned about being over scrutinized. Some of it though is sort of like, do we owe anybody anything? No, probably not. Back to that. But I know we want to make sure we've crossed our T's and dotted our I's. And I know we want to be collaborative with people too. So we're in a little bit in a rock and a hard place. Maybe none of this will pan out like this. Maybe everyone
No,
will be
you're
like,
right, and it may
yes,
not.
this is amazing.
Right.
And let's hope
it
that
may,
they are.
it
I
may
know
be
that there's,
non-linear, right? It may start
Right.
off great and then.
right. It will. It's going to probably be a roller coaster
Or-
ride.
yeah.
So
Right.
It
just
is
strap
absolutely
in
a roller
and buckle up.
coaster
Put your
Let's
keep
do
your
this,
hands
guys.
in-
Buckle up.
We're gonna do this, and I think it is. It's positivity. Let's bring that positivity. This is such an opportunity for us right
We are
now.
in
This
control.
is so, and I'm sorry,
Well, I
it's
think
also
that's-
really needed. It's needed.
That's, I think that's what, like, even though I'm thinking of all the, oh geez, roller coaster scenario, this is a monumental, exciting thing that we can bring to the community and do for the whole community and our kids. So if we
Yeah.
keep that intention,
Yeah.
and that's our intention.
Yes.
It's not to cause fumes and gravel roads or whatever.
Yeah.
Our intention is so good, and if we keep that in the forefront of our minds in every conversation we have, we're gonna be okay.
And if it gets tough for anybody, let's text each other, call each other.
Yeah.
Like if we're all, we
If
may
you need
all-
to troubleshoot something,
Jill,
yeah,
I know
let
you
us
get
know.
cornered at church sometimes. You said,
Yes.
or you're
But-
more in the community.
But
than
you
others.
have
Sometimes,
all the
like,
right in the
everybody
world if
does.
you're getting like cornered to go, I don't know.
Personally, yeah.
I don't know what I need to be saying or what is information to tell you.
Point 'em to the
All I
website.
know is this is a really good thing for, like you can say, I don't know what's legal to tell you, so
I'm not.
yeah.
So I'm
back
not.
off.
No, you're good at that. You're
But
really
I
good at
mean,
that.
you can just say like, hey, it's
You
a
don't
really
have to give them an
cool
answer. It's like, right,
thing.
come to
oh
the
my
meetings,
gosh,
listen.
Come to
how
the meetings.
exciting.
Yeah. So
Just make it a positive no matter what.
Yeah.
And if you have a bad day, call one of us. 'Cause I
Yeah,
think, to your
that's
point, we don't know
helpful.
how this.
right. If
there
you
could
guys
be
are hearing
pockets where
something
it don't
tripping
feel
up,
good.
like call each other, call me. Let's all make sure that we're kind of aware of what's going on. That's helpful. Okay.
Go team.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
thing.
Maybe
guys.
having our
It's a good
December
thing.
5th meeting in the auditorium.
Oh
Back to that.
God. Okay, so it's 10:37. Do we have a motion to move back into open session?
So moved.
That would be
Second.
Jill and then Julie. Jill BD. Julie.
Hold on.
Okay.
You wanna vote or no?
All in
Oh, yeah.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
I say,
Gosh, poor Marilyn.